Chapter 560. Slightly startled in his heart, Xiaoyan's action of leaving also paused. His dark black eyes hurriedly looked in the direction where the aura came from. At the same time, the dou qi in his body also quietly began to circulate at this moment. According to the recent judgment of Xiaoyan of the auras of those strong people, the aura that had appeared within the range of Xiaoyan's senses seemed to belong to an elite dou di. However, due to the distance between the two parties being quite far, Xiaoyan was unable to determine if he knew the identity of the owner of this aura at this moment. Damn it, looks like I can only hide first. It is unexpected that I would actually meet such a fellow just as I have recovered. Xiaoyan clenched his teeth. A solemn heart immediately rose in Xiaoyan's heart. Now was not the time. If Xiaoyan were to face an elite dou di alone, it would undoubtedly cause quite a lot of trouble for Xiaoyan. Even though he was confident that he could escape unscathed from the hands of an ordinary dou di, Xiaoyan did not wish to clash with them if it was possible. Of course, regardless of whether Xiaoyan wanted to meet an elite dou di, it all depended on this elite dou di who was currently flying toward Xiaoyan. At this moment, Xiaoyan could only hope to the greatest extent that this person was not coming for him. Otherwise, it was likely that another fierce battle would be unavoidable. As for the thought of leaping and fleeing, it was wiped away by Xiaoyan the moment it appeared in Xiaoyan's heart. Under the situation where he did not know the exact strength and motive of the other party, his rash actions would only attract the other party's attention. Once Xiaoyan's identity was recognized by the other party, the result would still be unavoidable. Since there was not much of a difference whether he ran or not, why should Xiaoyan waste his energy? Xiaoyan's gaze swiftly swept across the continuous mountain range below. He quickly found a relatively obscure dense forest. Immediately he did not hesitate any longer. He leaped and swiftly descended, entering that dense forest. At the same time, Xiaoyan withdrew the aura all over his body. He held his breath and focused, carefully paying attention to the empty space where he was standing earlier. He could sense that the owner of that aura was getting closer and closer. As that aura grew closer, the expression on Xiaoyan's face also became incomparably solemn. Until a certain moment when a miserable human figure suddenly appeared in the empty space where there was no one. The expression on Xiaoyan's face instantly became one of astonishment. This was because the human figure that suddenly appeared in the empty space at this moment, the person who caused Xiaoyan's heart tensed for a moment, was actually Zhao Xian, who had fled in panic after being intimidated by Mu Ronghao's strength 7 days ago. Zhao Xian. When he saw the person in front of him, Xiaoyan immediately felt a sense of astonishment in his heart. It was really hard to imagine that after being forced to retreat by a strong person like Mu Ronghao, this fellow actually dared to come here again after 7 days. Could it be that this fellow was really not afraid of death? At the same time that he felt astonished in his heart, Xiaoyan, who was in the dark, could not help but cast a curious gaze at Zhao Xian, who was in the sky. Since this fellow dared to risk his life to come here again, there must be a big reason behind it. Otherwise, he would not be willing to risk his life to appear here again. Zhao Xian, who had revealed himself, still looked incomparably pale. Although the injuries in his body had been initially suppressed, it was only treating the symptoms and not the root cause. This could be seen from his extremely weak aura. In addition, one of his arms had been personally cut off by Mu Ronghao, causing his strength to be greatly damaged. This caused the current Zhao Xian to be even weaker than he looked on the surface. Perhaps this was the reason why Xiaoyan was unable to identify the former's identity after sensing his aura. After understanding this, Xiaoyan could not help but reveal a cold smile on his face. 7 days ago, this fellow had almost taken his life. At that time, Xiaoyan was as weak as a little lamb in front of him. It had only been 7 days, but the position of the prey and the hunter had already swapped. Thinking of this, Xiaoyan could not help but feel somewhat curious. If this fellow saw that he appeared in front of him in such a good condition, what kind of interesting expression would Zhao Xian's face reveal? However, Xiaoyan was not in a hurry to reveal himself. He also wanted to know just why Zhao Xian would once again return to this place after 7 days. When Xiaoyan once again focused his gaze, Zhao Xian, who was in the sky, was carefully searching the mountain range below with his scarlet eyes that were filled with blood. Due to his injuries, his spiritual strength had become extremely weak. At this moment, he carefully spread out and carefully searched the mountain range below, as if he was looking for something. Seeing this scene, Xiaoyan, who was hidden, could not help but raise his eyebrows slightly. He thought for a moment in his heart. After which, Xiaoyan quickly understood everything in front of him. The reason Zhao Xian had returned here was most likely for the sake of retrieving his spatial ring. It was because he did not have the storage ring that Zhao Xian was unable to use medicinal pills to quickly recover from his injuries. This was why he was still so weak even after 7 days had passed. Zhao Xian clearly understood that without the help of medicinal pills, he did not know how long it would take for him to recover from the injuries in his body. Once it was delayed for too long, it might even leave behind some unerasable side effects. Moreover, if his seriously injured body were to meet another elite Dodi, he would be in danger at that time. Even though they were both Dodi, he believed that they would not easily let go of the opportunity to beat a drowning dog. Hence, even though he clearly knew that Mu Ronghao might still be here, Zhao Xian could only take the risk in order to quickly recover from his injuries. However, from the looks of the current situation, this move of Zhao Xian's was the right one. Mu Ronghao had already left this place a few days ago. Now, as long as Zhao Xian was able to find the arm that Mu Ronghao had cut off 7 days ago, the storage ring on his right finger would once again return to his hands. At the same time, the thing that Zhao Xian was most concerned about was the rank 4 medicinal pill, the extreme transformation pill, within the storage ring. Ah, found it. At a certain moment, Zhao Xian's pale face could not help but reveal a joy. His right arm had already been cut off. Now that he was able to find his storage ring, this was already a great fortune amidst the misfortune. This caused Zhao Xian's heart to suddenly become much more relaxed. As Zhao Xian's weak spiritual strength was slowly withdrawn, a broken arm also slowly floated into the air from the mountain range below. Cuckoo, this is really a surprise amidst the unexpected. However, at this moment, a calm soft laughter was faintly transmitted over. At the same time, the expression on Zhao Xian's pale face instantly changed drastically. The next moment, when Zhao Xian turned his head to look at the empty space beside him with a shocked face, he saw a young man wearing a black robe with his arms crossed over his chest. His face parted into a cold smile as he looked at him. Chapter 561. You are Xiao Yan. The moment he saw Xiao Yan, Zhao Xian's entire person seemed to have been struck by lightning. His pale face was suddenly replaced with a shocked expression. Immediately after, while his entire person continuously retreated, his eyes that were filled with shock also swiftly swept across the sky. From the looks of it, he seemed to be afraid of something. Seeing this, Xiao Yan could not help but let out a cold laugh. The arc on the corner of his mouth grew wider and wider as he coldly said, "Ah, there's no need to look. They have already left this place long ago. Right now there's only the two of us here." Hearing Xiao Yan's words, Zhao Xian slowly withdrew his gaze with lingering fear. At the same time, a hint of ruthlessness surfaced in the eyes he used to look at Xiao Yan. "Xiao Yan, I didn't expect that you would still be here." A low and deep voice slowly spat out from Zhao Xian's mouth. However, due to Zhao Xian's current state, this voice sounded somewhat powerless, just like an old man past his prime. However, even so, it was not difficult for one to hear the resentment and killing intent contained within those words. It was all because of Xiao Yan in front of him that he had one of his arms forcefully chopped off by someone. That was why he had to hide in this mountain range in a sorry state for a few days like a stray dog. Now that he saw that Xiao Yan was actually safe and sound, the anger in Zhao Xian's heart was naturally difficult to suppress. "Haha, I also didn't expect that you would actually dare to return here again. Looks like the temptation of the extreme transformation pill is quite great for you." With a soft laugh, Xiao Yan's gaze also shifted below. At this moment, the severed arm that was slowly floating in the air under Zhao Xian's control. More accurately speaking, it should be the storage ring that was worn on the finger of the severed arm. Hearing this, the expression on Zhao Xian's face immediately became gloomy. A pair of scarlet eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan. There was no need to explain the boundless killing intent. Xiao Yan, with just you also dare to have ideas about my apotheosis pill?" It was a long while later before a hoarse voice was once again spat out from Zhao Xian's mouth. At the same time he said these words, one could clearly see that Zhao Xian's body was trembling slightly due to the killing intent in his chest. Threads of dense white dou qi slowly surfaced from within Zhao Xian's body. His face also recovered a little sleek redness under the lingering of this dou qi. Seeing this, Xiao Yan involuntarily raised his eyebrows. A skinny camel was still bigger than a horse. Even though the current Zhao Xian was already so weak, he was still an elite Dodi no matter how one put it. If Xiao Yan dared to lower his guard, he might be viciously bitten by this fellow. Humph, if it was an ordinary time, I would really not have the ability to snatch this apotheosis pill from you. However, who asked you to appear in front of me in such a state? Therefore, I will unceremoniously accept this apotheosis pill today. With a cold laugh, Xiao Yan was not afraid. Even if the Zhao Xian in front of him was still difficult to deal with, was he so easy to provoke? 7 days ago he, Xiao Yan, was able to break one of Zhao Xian's arms. 7 days later he would be able to take this fellow's life. At the same time his words sounded, Xiao Yan's body flashed. He immediately used the absolute sky steps under his feet. In the blink of an eye he had already arrived in front of Zhao Xian. The muscles on his right arm bulged. Quickly following this, his white hand suddenly clenched into a fist. As the dou qi in his body poured out, a fist violently smashed toward Zhao Xian's head. Umph! Seeing Xiao Yan attack, the pupils in Zhao Xian's eyes shrunk slightly. Immediately, it turned into a cold snort. At the same time his body leaned to one side, he suddenly raised his right leg and used it to violently meet Xiao Yan's fist that was attacking him. His right arm was already empty. His left arm, which had its bones broken by Xiao Yan, was temporarily unable to be used. Hence, Zhao Xian could only focus all the strength in his body on his legs. Bang! Xiao Yan and Zhao Xian flew backwards after the attack landed. With a shake of his entire body, Xiao Yan's body steadily stood in the air. On the other side, Zhao Xian did not fall into a disadvantage. His right leg violently stomped on the air. At the same time that a huge force poured out, Zhao Xian's body also steadily stood in the air. Humph! With a soft snort, Xiao Yan's brows tightly knitted together. At the same time the expression on his face became cold. Although the collision earlier was short, Xiao Yan was able to sense from it that even though Zhao Xian's strength was much weaker than before, it was still not very possible for Xiao Yan to defeat him in a short period of time. Just based on Zhao Xian's current state, even if he was weakened to such an extent, an ordinary half-emperor would still be unable to defeat him. Unfortunately, Xiao Yan was no ordinary half-emperor. Off. Lightly exhaling, Xiao Yan slowly raised his right arm. In the next instant, when Zhao Xian raised his eyes to stare at Xiao Yan suddenly let out a low shout in his heart. At the same time, his raised right hand suddenly clenched tightly. Following a flash of black light, the pitch-black heavy ruler instantly landed in Xiao Yan's hand. The appearance of the heavy ruler caused the expression on Zhao Xian's face to involuntarily change slightly. He had taken out his weapon. From the looks of it, Xiao Yan was also planning to display his true strength. When he thought of this, Zhao Xian's heart could not help but be secretly awed. However, he did not have the time to consider any further. Xiao Yan, who was holding the heavy ruler, once again charged towards Zhao Xian. Humph! Wanting to take advantage of the situation? How can it be so easy? Zhao Xian clenched his teeth. A thought passed through his mind and the dou qi in his body once again surged. It swiftly covered both of his legs and he did not dodge or avoid it as he collided head-on with Xiao Yan. Bang! A soul-stirring bang swept over the sky. The heavy ruler that Xiao Yan swung down violently from a great height was forcefully blocked by Zhao Xian. The two of them were actually evenly matched when they collided in this attack. Umph! Zhao Xian let out a cold snort. His body once again pulled back. His feet stomped and covered his intensely trembling right leg. The volatile expression on his face also swiftly calmed down. Clearly, even though Zhao Xian acted as if it did not matter on the surface, the truth was that Zhao Xian, who was currently at a disadvantage in all aspects, still felt quite a great amount of pressure when facing Xiao Yan in this manner. Ugh! The failure of his attack also caused Xiao Yan to feel a shock in his heart. However, soon after, Xiao Yan once again raised the huge ruler in his hand. His body moved and he once again charged forward. On the opposite side, Zhao Xian did not dare to underestimate Xiao Yan in his heart when he saw that the latter had once again attacked. His body swiftly moved and the little remaining dou qi in his body once again crazily surged out of his body. Bang bang bang. The continuous sound of collisions resounded repeatedly in the sky. Wave after wave of turbulent energy ripples swept across the entire sky like ocean waves. The invisible space repeatedly collapsed under this strength and the entire sky changed color. Chapter 562. Wild winds howled furiously in the vast and empty sky. The ferocious hurricane was just like a huge beast that could destroy everything as it wantonly rampaged across the sky. The howling of the wind swept across the land, causing the entire land to tremble in fear under this frightening pressure. Unknowingly, the sun had disappeared. It was unknown whether it was because the sun had set or because even the sky was escaping. In the middle of this storm, a somewhat illusionary human figure was ferociously wearing an extremely frightening densely white face. The corners of his mouth were lifted to reveal a bloodthirsty and cruel smile. Both of his arms danced as his palms crazily grabbed at the surrounding empty space. It was as though he wished that he could stuff all the spiritual strength around him into his body. Although his face was still as pale as paper, The incomparably abundant energy within his body caused the current Zhao Xian's heart to become even crazier. This was especially so when he saw Xiaoyan, whose face was even paler than his own. Zhao Xian felt extremely carefree in his heart. In his eyes, the current Xiaoyan was likely already a dead person. Ha 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 ha. Xiaoyan, to think that this venerable self thought so highly of you. You did not expect that the consequences of being careless would be death. Seeing Xiaoyan, who was still stubbornly walking towards him with great difficulty, the ferocious expression on Zhao Xian's face appeared extremely frightening. At the same time that a ferocious laughter was emitted from his mouth, a thought passed through his mind. The originally turbulent and frightening suction force within his body became even more frightening at this moment. As an even more frightening suction force crazily surged out from within Zhao Xian's body, the spiritual strength that enveloped Zhao Xian's body seemed to have found an outlet to pour out. It transformed into an invisible wave that swiftly poured into Zhao Xian's body as though it had been enlightened. Following the continuous pouring of these spiritual strength, the aura on Zhao Xian's body also rapidly soared. At the same time, an invisible and vast spiritual pressure also spread out from within Zhao Xian's body. Under this frightening spiritual pressure, even the empty space around Zhao Xian's body was actually forcefully torn apart, forming numerous dark black spatial cracks. Ha 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 ha. You are indeed worthy of being an alchemist. The strength of your spiritual strength is really not something that an ordinary person can compare with. Closing his eyes slightly, Zhao Xiangao raised his head and spoke slowly with an expression of enjoyment. After devouring Xiaoyan's spiritual strength, Zhao Xian's condition rapidly recovered. His body was almost filled with spiritual strength, causing Zhao Xian to involuntarily let out a long sigh of relief. Afterwards, he slowly withdrew his gaze and looked at Xiaoyan again with a vicious smile. His white eyes revealed a cruel bloodthirst. Originally, the demigod intended to perish together with you. However, from the looks of it now, there is no need for that. Ah! Zhao Xian's eyes greedily watched Xiaoyan opposite him, whose qi had become increasingly weak. The bloodthirsty smile that appeared on the corner of his mouth was even more glaring. Quickly following this, Zhao Xian once again opened his mouth and said with a savage smile, "Now, I intend to devour all of your soul energy." Ah! The sinister laughter was like the screech of a ferocious ghost, piercing one's eardrums. At the same time, the suction force within Zhao Xian's body became even more turbulent. In the end, the space around him was unable to withstand the crazy tearing of the suction force. It was forcefully torn into pieces, turning into a pitch-black and endless space. Cough cough. Uncontrollably coughing a few times, Xiaoyan felt that his entire body was no longer under his control. Every step he took and landed would cause Xiaoyan's body to tremble endlessly. Although Xiaoyan's body was still standing steadily in the air, the loss of spiritual strength in his body caused Xiaoyan to unknowingly lose control of his body. At this moment, Xiaoyan was like a soul that was contained in a bottle. Any of his actions would cause the bottle to shake left and right. However, this caused Xiaoyan, who was within it, to feel even more uneasy. Cough cough. Until a certain moment, when Xiaoyan once again stabilized his body with great difficulty, his footsteps, which should have continued forward, came to a halt at this moment. Seeing this, Zhao Xian first raised his eyebrows slightly. Soon after, a cold smile appeared on his face as he opened his mouth and laughed with a sinister expression. Haha, are you finally unable to endure any longer? Xiaoyan, looks like you are ultimately still something that belongs to this venerable self. This life of yours should belong to this venerable self. Ah! The instant his voice fell, the expression on Zhao Xian's face suddenly became ferocious. His solidified foot suddenly stomped on the air. Surging spiritual strength immediately shattered the space under his feet. At the same time, Zhao Xian's body instantly appeared in front of Xiaoyan. His right hand turned into a claw as he looked down from above and viciously clawed at Xiaoyan's head. Cough. Aren't you celebrating a little too early? However, at this moment Xiaoyan, whose face was incomparably pale, trembled slightly as he spat out a sentence with great difficulty. Hearing this, Zhao Xian's heart was filled with a cold smile. He did not expect that Xiaoyan would actually dare to say such shameless words at such a time. Surging spiritual strength swiftly gathered on Zhao Xian's right claw. A terrifying pressure swept across the entire sky. Wherever the claw passed, the space instantly collapsed. Numerous invisible forces continuously shot above the space. The terrifying wind pressure was like a large blade as it first landed on Xiaoyan's forehead. In an instant, fresh blood gushed out from Xiaoyan's forehead as though it was free of charge. However, due to the fact that Xiao Yan's spiritual strength was currently extremely weak, Xiao Yan did not notice this ordinary feeling at all. In the next instant, Zhao Xian's claw, which was wrapped in surging spiritual strength, had already arrived a few inches above Xiao Yan's head. At this moment, Xiao Yan's entire body was covered with hundreds of wounds of various sizes. Fresh blood gushed out like a fountain, completely dyeing Xiao Yan into a bloody person. Die. Haha, you can't blame me for today's matter. You can only blame yourself for being too greedy. Bang. Soon after, when Zhao Xian's claw was about to land on Xiao Yan's head, an intense bang, like a balloon bursting, suddenly resounded across the sky. At the same time, Zhao Xian's claw, which was about to land, instantly froze in midair. The greed and bloodthirstiness in Zhao Xian's pair of densely white eyes swiftly disappeared. What replaced it was a soulless emptiness. How can this be? When the last sentence that was filled with extreme unwillingness was emitted from his mouth, a cluster of pink flames swiftly surged out from within Zhao Xian's body in front of Xiao Yan. At the same time, there was also a cluster of invisible heavenly flame, mixed within this flame. It was the combination of the two that was able to completely wipe out Zhao Xian's consciousness in such a short instant. As the heavenly flame surged out, Zhao Xian's originally solid body swiftly became illusory. A wave of wild suction force once again surged out from Zhao Xian's abdomen, gathering all of the spiritual strength that Zhao Xian had unleashed earlier in an instant. Cough cough, haha, you even dare to randomly swallow my spiritual strength. Zhao Xian, is it you or me who is like a moth flying into a flame? Chapter 563. In the blink of an eye, the intense fight in the sky had already continued for a couple of hours. The sky above the two people's heads gradually became dark, but the outcome of the fight in the arena could not be seen even after a long time had passed. Although Zhao Xian was not in his best condition, he was still an elite Do Di. The Do Qi in his body was swiftly exhausted as he was barely able to receive Xiao Yan's attacks time and time again. Of course, while his Do Qi was being exhausted, Zhao Xian's current condition had also unavoidably become even weaker. At the same time, Xiao Yan, who was facing him head-on, was not in a much better state at this moment. The exhaustion of Do Qi affected both parties. While the Do Qi in Zhao Xian's body was being exhausted, Xiao Yan's Do Qi was also being exhausted. Moreover, due to Zhao Xian being an elite Do Di, the degree of Do Qi in his body was much greater than Xiao Yan's. Even though he was currently quite seriously injured, his Do Qi reserves were not much worse than Xiao Yan's. Zhao Xian's face was pale as he stood in the empty air. One could easily see that the thick white Do Qi that lingered on the surface of his body had become much thinner than before. Even his face had a couple of bruises of various sizes. Clearly they were given to him by Xiao Yan. Even though this was the case, it was merely a couple of external injuries that could not truly prove anything. Even though the current situation in the arena did indeed appear to be Xiao Yan having the upper hand, wanting to completely end this fight would still depend on who had more tricks up their sleeves. Xiao Yan, if you want to snatch food from the tiger's mouth, you must first see just how much weight you have. Zhao Xian's face carried a dark viciousness as he stared at Xiao Yan. His mouth panted roughly as he spoke to Xiao Yan with a savage smile. Although Zhao Xian had suffered a couple of losses during the process of his collision with Xiao Yan, they were all small matters. It was likely that with the strength of his elite Do Di's physical body, as long as Xiao Yan was unable to defeat him within a short period of time, it was not certain just who would emerge victorious in the end. Of course, this was on the premise that Xiao Yan could not defeat him in a short period of time. A toothless tiger, no matter how sharp its claws are, can't eat a human. Xiao Yan laughed coldly when he heard this. He parted his mouth and the expression in his eyes suddenly changed. The Do Qi in his body quickly became unusually turbulent. Skyfire 3 Mysterious Change, First Change. As Xiao Yan's cry sounded in his heart, the aura within Xiao Yan's body suddenly soared. His pair of pitch-black eyes were also swiftly filled with a brilliant heavenly flame. The change in the aura within Xiao Yan's body also caused the expression on Zhao Xian's face to change slightly. Soon after, the giant ruler in Xiao Yan's hand was violently swung. A chi-chi sound of rushing wind immediately resounded over this empty space. Enormous force poured down in torrents, causing circular invisible ripples to spread out in the empty space. Zhao Xian clenched his teeth. A solemn expression was revealed on his pale face. The change in the aura within Xiao Yan's body caused him to faintly feel an uneasy feeling rising from the bottom of his heart. Puff. The giant ruler trembled slightly. One could hear a puff sound and the brilliant heavenly flame rose in response. It swiftly covered the entire giant ruler. The heavenly flame rose and a frighteningly high temperature spread apart. The surrounding empty space also involuntarily became distorted. The expression on Zhao Xian's face involuntarily changed once again when he sensed the high temperature that swiftly rose around him. He was also extremely afraid of Xiao Yan's heavenly flame. The terror of a heavenly flame was something that the entire continent was certain of. Even though Zhao Xian was an elite Dou-Di, he was similarly unable to treat it as nothing. So what if it is a heavenly flame? It is not so easy to defeat this venerable self. Zhao Xian let out a cold snort. He crazily maneuvered the little Dou-Qi in his body and agglomerated a dim Dou-Qi light barrier on the surface of his body, isolating the hot air in the surrounding air. From the looks of it, Zhao Xian did not appear to be as calm and composed as his words made him sound. Seeing this, Xiao Yan involuntarily laughed coldly in his heart. His arm immediately shook and the giant ruler in his hand was waved and lifted. Ha! At the same time that the giant ruler was lifted, Xiao Yan's mouth let out an earth-shaking cry. His feet moved and the sky extinction steps was instantly displayed. Soon after, Xiao Yan's body once again appeared in front of Zhao Xian. The giant ruler danced and hovered above Xiao Yan's head. Both of his hands tightly held the handle of the heavy ruler. The heavenly flame in his body was wildly poured into the giant ruler. The brilliant flame that was wrapped around it also soared to the sky at this moment. Its aura was like a rainbow. Furious lightning waterfall. The expression on Zhao Xian's face was somewhat solemn in the face of Xiao Yan's ruler. While his body swiftly pulled back, dense white Dou-Qi swiftly agglomerated in front of him. In the blink of an eye, it agglomerated into a flashing furious lightning. Numerous thunderbolts descended from the sky and interweaved into a lightning waterfall in front of Zhao Xian. The moment Xiao Yan's heavy ruler fell, it collided heavily with it. A bright glow immediately shot out from the point of contact when the two came into contact. The glaring glow caused one to have difficulty opening one's eyes. In the middle of the light, the giant ruler that was wrapped in the heavenly flame suddenly trembled violently. Streaks of lightning shot towards the giant ruler like lightning snakes, struggling with the heavenly flame that covered the ruler. It was as if they were determined to fight to the death. Chi-chi-chi. Following the battle between the heavenly flame and the thunderbolts, waves of chi-chi sounds appeared in the sky. Xiao Yan was also forcefully blocked by this furious lightning waterfall of Zhao Xian. Humph, a bandy is indeed a bandy. The gap between you and a Dou-Di is not something that you can overstep. Seeing that Xiao Yan was blocked, Zhao Xian's pale face involuntarily revealed a ferocious smile. The gaze that he used to look at Xiao Yan was filled with disdain. However, the cold laughter in his mouth had just sounded when Xiao Yan, who had been blocked by the furious lightning waterfall, raised his eyes that were filled with a fire glow at this moment. The cold smile on the corner of his mouth gradually widened. Skyfire 3 Mysterious Change, Second Change. Following the low cry that was emitted from within his heart, Xiao Yan's hand that was holding the ruler's hilt abruptly exerted strength. The Dou-Qi in his body also became even more wild and violent at this moment. Following this, it was poured into the enormous ruler in his hand. Bang! The heavenly flame swept out and the heavy ruler violently smashed onto the furious lightning waterfall. The lightning waterfall, which was originally agglomerated from numerous thunderbolts, actually split open and formed an arm-thick crack line under this attack of Xiao Yan's. Third change. Suddenly an earth-shaking stern cry was once again emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth. A bright fire glow shot out from Xiao Yan's eyes, transforming into a heavenly flame light beam. Following the fall of the heavy ruler, it mercilessly tore apart the lightning waterfall in front of him in a manner that could easily destroy all obstacles. Soon after, the heavy ruler that had torn apart the waterfall violently smashed onto Zhao Xian's chest in front of his extremely horrified gaze. Bang! A bang sound appeared. One could clearly hear the bursting sound of a balloon exploding. At the same time, a large amount of fresh blood that was mixed with fragments of his internal organs was wildly spat out from Zhao Xian's mouth. The fresh blood agglomerated and transformed into a blood arrow that shot towards the incoming Xiao Yan. Seeing this, Xiao Yan frowned and let out a cold snort. His body that was charging forward paused for a moment. The enormous ruler in his hand rotated and the heavenly flame flew out, easily breaking the blood arrow. At this moment, Zhao Xian's aura was also incomparably weak as he flew backwards. Finally, he violently smashed into the mountain range below. Chapter 564. Cuckoo, trying to hide your spirit in front of me. Have you forgotten that I am an alchemist? While Zhao Xian's face revealed a horrified expression, Xiao Yan's body, which was originally seated cross-legged in the empty space in front of him, slowly disappeared. Soon after, Xiao Yan's voice, which was filled with ridicule, was slowly transmitted from behind Zhao Xian. An afterimage. The unusual situation that appeared in front of him caused Zhao Xian to be greatly alarmed. The expression on his pale face changed abruptly as he turned his head to look behind him in horror. Behind Zhao Xian, Xiao Yan had his hands crossed over his chest. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a cold smile as he stared at Zhao Xian with a cold expression. A frightening and vast spiritual strength was continuously spreading out from between Xiao Yan's brows. At the same time, threads of mysterious energy that could not be seen by the naked eye followed Xiao Yan's guidance and continued to converge on the 7 black tents that surrounded Zhao Xian. These tents were the 6 tents that Xiao Yan had agglomerated using the Great Way of the Void after he had comprehended the Great Way. However, the difference from before was that there was an additional tent within these 6 tents. In the earlier battle, Xiao Yan had only used the Great Way for a short instant. Hence, Zhao Xian did not pay much attention to these strange tents. Only at this moment did Zhao Xian carefully observe them after being surrounded by these 7 tents. When Zhao Xian discovered that these strange black tents were agglomerated from the Great Way, even with Zhao Xian's mental strength as a Do-Di, his expression involuntarily changed drastically. At the same time, his mouth involuntarily let out a loud exclamation. This is the Great Way. How is this possible? The emotions in Zhao Xian's heart immediately became difficult to control when he recognized that this was the Great Way. No matter how he thought about it, he could not imagine how a Bandi-class brat could control the Great Way. The strength of the Great Way was ethereal and difficult to find. Even a Do-Di-class expert might not be able to comprehend it. There were even quite a number of experts who were similarly helpless in the face of the strength of the Great Way despite having a cultivation that far exceeded that of an ordinary Do-Di. The power of the Great Path was different from the ordinary powers in the world. There was no shortcut to controlling the power of the Great Path other than using one's heart to comprehend it. Of course, the difficulty of comprehending the power of the Great Path also made it even more powerful. This also drove even more people crazy. Generally speaking, those who were able to control the Great Path energy were super strong people who had at least reached the Do-Di class. This was because using the strength of the Great Way exhausted one's Do-Chi. Only a Do-Di was able to use the strength of the Great Way for a long period of time. As for a Bandi, forget about Do-Chi. At the very least, there had never been news of a Bandi controlling the strength of the Great Way on the continent. Haha, nothing is impossible. If you insist on being so stubborn, then I can only say that you are ignorant and inexperienced. Seeing the expression of disbelief on Zhao Xian's face, Xiao Yan coldly smiled and spoke with a face full of ridicule. Hearing Xiao Yan's words, the expression on Zhao Xian's face did not calm down because of this. Instead, it became even more serious. Only at this moment did Zhao Xian truly discover that the strength that Xiao Yan possessed was far stronger than he had imagined. After all, Zhao Xian had never grasped the power of the Great Path. Who exactly are you? Being surrounded by the 7 tents, Zhao Xian only felt his entire body turn icy cold. An aura of death had unknowingly enveloped Zhao Xian's body. Zhao Xian's heart was filled with fear. The muscles at the corner of his eyes twitched intensely with unwillingness. Hearing this, Xiao Yan's eyebrows twitched slightly. Immediately, his gaze flickered slightly as he parted his mouth and smiled. Xiao Yan, a nameless person from the Do-Chi continent. Following Xiao Yan's words, the expression on Zhao Xian's face suddenly stiffened. The shock in his heart could no longer be easily described with words. That's right. No matter who it was, after hearing these words, they would likely feel disbelief. Perhaps, in the origin martial continent, some people had already forgotten that name that could not be taken seriously. The Do-Chi continent was a continent that had not had any experts for thousands of years. Gradually, it had become a distant history in the hearts of some people. In the hearts of most people in the origin martial continent, the Do-Chi continent had perhaps long been considered an abandoned continent. Regarding this point, even the former Zhao Xian was no exception. However, today, a black-robed young man carrying a heavy ruler was standing in the western region of the origin martial continent with such an arrogant attitude. Even though he had provoked various factions, he still had a fearless expression on his face. Who would believe that he, Xiao Yan, was actually from the abandoned continent that everyone thought was a barren land? Xiao Yan completely ignored the shocked expression that was revealed on Zhao Xian's face. He beckoned with his large hand and the dark black heavy Xian ruler once again landed in Xiao Yan's hand. The tip of the ruler descended. At the same time that it rubbed against the air intensely, it emitted a chi-chi sound of breaking air. A strong wind pressure carried a hurricane that swept across the sky. After being slightly startled, Zhao Xian recovered. What he faced was Xiao Yan's heavy ruler. Cough Mr. Xiao Yan, do you really have to kill me? Feeling the bloody aura coming from the heavy ruler's blade, Zhao Xian's illusory eyes abruptly shrunk. He paused for a moment before opening his mouth to speak in a hoarse voice. Didn't you say that the fight between us was actually a misunderstanding from the start? Since that is the case, there is no need for you to say so much nonsense. If you have any other techniques, you can just use them all. No matter how much you say, you will not be able to avoid death. Before Zhao Xian's words sounded, Xiao Yan let out a faint cold laugh. At the same time, the huge ruler that was tightly clenched in his hand was suddenly waved. As a huge force surged, a whistling sound of rushing wind also sounded beside Zhao Xian's ear. A cold snort that was filled with resentment was emitted from Zhao Xian's mouth while his expression changed. Xiao Yan, even if this venerable self were to fight to the death today, I will definitely make you pay the price in blood. As the cold and vicious cry was emitted, Zhao Xian's illusory body suddenly trembled intensely. At the same time, a crazy and strange suction force was suddenly emitted from within Zhao Xian's body at this moment. At the same time, the expression on Xiao Yan's face involuntarily changed. When the suction force was emitted, he was actually shocked to feel that the spiritual strength within his body was actually being torn apart by that strange suction force. Immediately after, an earth-shaking stern cry was suddenly emitted from Zhao Xian's mouth. Human rank soul skill, soul amplifying technique. Chapter 565. Human class soul skill, soul amplifying skill. A frightening suction force was suddenly emitted from Zhao Xian's body the moment this vicious cry was emitted from his mouth. Xiao Yan's expression involuntarily changed in the face of this frightening suction force. A deep shock involuntarily surged into his heart. Xiao Yan only felt that the spiritual strength he had unleashed in this world was being pulled by that strange suction force without his control when the suction force was emitted. Soon after, it was forcefully sucked into Zhao Xian's body in front of Xiao Yan's extremely shocked eyes. Moreover, this suction force seemed to specialize in spiritual strength. In the blink of an eye, it had already forcefully swallowed quite a lot of Xiao Yan's spiritual origin energy. Each time a wisp of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength left his control, an intense tearing pain would be transmitted from Xiao Yan's mind. That kind of intense pain, as though his soul was being forcefully torn apart, caused the expression on Xiao Yan's face to swiftly become distorted. At the same time, a paleness had truly surged onto Xiao Yan's face, unlike the disguise he had put on earlier. Damn it, this strange Do skill is actually able to forcefully swallow another person's spiritual strength and turn it into one's own. Xiao Yan forcefully endured the intense pain that was transmitted from deep within his soul. The huge ruler in his hand trembled along with Xiao Yan's body. His unusually distorted face revealed the seriousness and pain in Xiao Yan's heart at this moment. It was unexpected that Zhao Xian was still able to unleash such a frightening Do skill even though he was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Helpless, Xiao Yan could only withdraw some distance. Only then did the frightening suction force that covered Xiao Yan's body lessen. Hey, human class soul skill. It is really unexpected that a 2-star Do D is actually able to obtain a soul skill of such a class. Unfortunately, this Do skill is too strange and does not follow the human path. It is destined to only be practiced by someone with such extreme thoughts. While Xiao Yan's expression was grave, Guyu, who was within his body, emitted a somewhat regretful voice. Xiao Yan's expression paused when he heard this. A joy immediately surged into his heart. Fortunately, Guyu had finally spoken at this critical moment. Old Gu, do you know how to deal with this fellow's soul skill? It will likely be troublesome if this fellow is allowed to continue. Brat, you must not underestimate any elite Do D. Even if the other party's body is seriously injured, the strength that he can erupt with is often much more frightening than you can imagine. This point is just like when they look at you. Xiao Yan's words were met with ridicule from Guyu. Xiao Yan bitterly laughed in his heart upon hearing this. He involuntarily revealed a smile on his face as he hurriedly opened his mouth to Guyu. His voice was a little anxious as he spoke. Old Gu, I will pay attention to what you have said in the future. However, the most important thing now is to deal with this fellow. Otherwise, I might really end up being dragged to my death by this fellow. Although a soul skill might not be easy to deal with, this fellow is merely a 2-star Do D. No matter how one puts it, the spiritual strength that he possesses cannot be compared with yours. If it was any other time, it would naturally be quite difficult for you to defeat him. However, this fellow is currently in a spiritual state. His strength has been reduced by at least 80%. This soul skill might be a human-class soul skill, but regardless of how strong the soul skill is, the strength of the user is the most important. You should be aware of this point. With your current spiritual strength and the help of the heavenly flame, it should not be difficult for you to break his soul skill. Guyu appeared to be unconcerned about the frightening aura that Xianxia had displayed at this moment. From his tone, there seemed to be a faint disdain contained within it. Xiaoyan appeared to have suddenly seen the light in his heart when he heard this. Indeed, he had only noticed how frightening this human-class soul skill was. However, he had forgotten that the current Xiaoxian was already an arrow at the end of its flight. Perhaps this soul skill might be quite powerful against others, but it was impossible for it to cause any substantial harm to Xiaoyan, who had the protection of a heavenly flame. Xiaoyan had simply placed too much importance on this soul skill. What should I do now? Should I forcefully break his soul skill? Xiaoyan's eyes were sharp as he stared at Xiaoxian. His hand gradually tightened its grip on the ruler's handle, emitting a creaking sound. No, however, Guyu's words caused Xiaoyan's body, which was just about to move, to suddenly be startled. His face, which had just recovered its cold expression, quickly became stunned. No. Not only should you not forcefully attack, but you should also give your spiritual strength to him so that he can devour it. Guyu's subsequent words caused Xiaoyan to be even more stunned. What kind of plan was this? Not only was he not going to deal with Xiaoxian, but he was even going to give his spiritual strength to him to devour. You can relax and just give it to him. However, you must first merge your heavenly flame into your soul. Guyu laughed. The meaning behind his words caused Xiaoyan's eyes to brighten. You seem to have thought of something. Old Gu, do you mean? Haha, just do as I say. I believe that you will definitely obtain quite a good harvest. Although this method might be a little overboard, isn't this old fellow's method even more vicious? Xiaoyan finally parted his mouth and smiled in his heart after hearing this. At the same time, his dark black eyes were slowly lifted. A thought passed through his mind and a brilliant heavenly flame immediately rose from deep within his dark black eyes. Brilliant. Wisps of heavenly flames quietly surged out of the pores all over Xiaoyan's body under Xiaoyan's control. They merged with the spiritual strength that had spread around Xiaoyan's body. With the integration of the heavenly flames, the wild wind, which was tearing at Xiaoyan's spiritual strength, was significantly cut off. Xiaoyan coldly smiled when he sensed this change. A thought passed through his mind and an invisible spiritual strength quickly spread. Its target was Xiaoxian. Haha, since you wish to devour my spiritual strength, I will allow you to devour it to your heart's content. Xiaoyan coldly laughed in his heart. He took a step forward and slowly walked toward Xiaoxian while holding the heavy ruler in front of Xiaoxian's surprised eyes. Xiaoxian involuntarily felt a surprise in his heart when he saw that Xiaoyan had suddenly neither dodged nor dodged. Instead, he walked toward him. Soon after, waves of majestic spiritual strength swiftly swarmed into Xiaoxian's body as the strange suction force surged out of his body. Xiaoxian let out a surprised cry in his heart. Soon after, the expression on his face became ferocious. He bared his teeth and looked at Xiaoyan. His face was filled with a ferocious smile as he laughed out loud. Ah! Xiaoyan, you are really seeking your own death. You clearly know that this venerable self will devour your spiritual strength, yet you still dare to step forward. You are like a moth to a flame. Soul-amplifying skill, devour him. Ah! However, the eyes that Xiaoyan used to look at the latter did not reveal the slightest ripple in the face of this. Although Xiaoyan's expression had swiftly turned pale due to the loss of his spiritual strength, Xiaoyan also knew that he would sooner or later take back everything that he had lost. Moreover, at that time, the things that he would take back would be even greater than this. Chapter 566. Wild winds howled angrily in the vast and empty sky. The ferocious hurricane was just like a huge beast that could destroy everything as it wantonly rampaged across the sky. The howling wind swept across the land, causing the entire land to tremble in fear under this frightening pressure. Unknowingly, the sun disappeared. No one knew whether it was because the sun had set or because even the sky was escaping. At the center of this hurricane, a somewhat illusionary human figure was ferociously wearing an extremely frightening densely white face. The corners of his mouth were lifted to reveal a bloodthirsty and cruel smile. Both of his arms danced as his palms crazily grabbed at the surrounding empty space. It was as though he wished that he could stuff all the spiritual strength around him into his body. Although his face was still as pale as paper, The incomparably abundant energy within his body caused the current Zhao Xian's heart to become even crazier. This was especially so when he saw Xiaoyan, whose face was even paler than his own. Zhao Xian felt extremely carefree in his heart. In his eyes, the current Xiaoyan was likely already a dead person. Ha 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 ha. Xiaoyan, to think that this venerable self thought so highly of you. You did not expect that the consequences of being careless would be death, right? The ferocious expression on Zhao Xian's face appeared extremely frightening as he watched Xiaoyan, who was still stubbornly walking towards him with great difficulty. At the same time that a ferocious laughter was emitted from his mouth, a thought passed through his mind. The originally turbulent and frightening suction force within his body became even more frightening at this moment. As an even more frightening suction force crazily surged out from within Zhao Xian's body, the spiritual strength that enveloped Zhao Xian's body seemed to have found an outlet to pour out. It transformed into an invisible wave that swiftly poured into Zhao Xian's body as though it had been enlightened. As these spiritual strength continued to pour in, the aura on Zhao Xian's body also rapidly soared. At the same time, an invisible and vast spiritual strength pressure also spread out from within Zhao Xian's body. Under this frightening spiritual strength pressure, even the empty space around Zhao Xian's body was actually forcefully torn apart, forming numerous dark black spatial cracks. Ha 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 ha, you are indeed worthy of being an alchemist. The strength of your spiritual strength is really not something that an ordinary person can compare with. Closing his eyes slightly, Zhao Xiangao raised his head and spoke slowly with an expression of enjoyment. After devouring Xiaoyan's spiritual strength, Zhao Xian's condition rapidly recovered. His body was almost filled with spiritual strength, causing Zhao Xian to involuntarily let out a long sigh of relief. Afterwards, he slowly withdrew his gaze and looked at Xiaoyan again with a vicious smile. His white eyes revealed a cruel bloodthirst. Originally, the demigod intended to perish together with you. However, from the looks of it now, there is no need for that. Ah! Zhao Xian's eyes greedily watched Xiaoyan opposite him, whose qi had become increasingly weak. The bloodthirsty smile that appeared on the corner of his mouth was even more glaring. Quickly following this, Zhao Xian once again opened his mouth and laughed savagely. Now, I intend to devour all of your soul energy. Ah! The sinister laughter was like the hiss of a malicious spirit, piercing one's eardrums. At the same time, the suction force in Zhao Xian's body became even more turbulent. In the end, the space around him was unable to withstand the crazy tearing of the suction force. It was forcefully torn into pieces, turning into a pitch-black and endless space. Cough cough. Coughing violently a few times, Xiaoyan only felt that his entire body was no longer listening to his commands. Every step he took and landed would cause Xiaoyan's body to tremble incessantly. Although Xiaoyan's body was still standing steadily in the air, the loss of spiritual strength in his body caused Xiaoyan to unknowingly lose a lot of control over his body. At this moment, Xiaoyan was like a soul in a bottle. Any of his actions would cause the bottle to shake left and right. However, this caused Xiaoyan, who was in the bottle, to feel even more uneasy. Cough cough. Until a certain moment, when Xiaoyan once again stabilized his body with great difficulty, his footsteps, which should have continued forward, stopped at this moment. Seeing this, Zhao Xian first raised his eyebrows slightly. Soon after, a cold smile appeared on his face as he laughed sinisterly. Haha, are you finally unable to endure any longer? Xiaoyan, looks like you are ultimately still something that belongs to this venerable self. This life of yours should belong to this venerable self. Ah! The instant his voice sounded, the expression on Zhao Xian's face suddenly became ferocious. His solidified foot suddenly stomped on the air, and the surging spiritual strength immediately shattered the space under his feet. At the same time, Zhao Xian's body instantly appeared in front of Xiaoyan. His right hand turned into a claw, and his entire body looked down from above as he viciously clawed at Xiaoyan's head. Cuff. Aren't you celebrating too early? However, at this moment Xiaoyan, whose face was incomparably pale, trembled slightly as he spat out a sentence with great difficulty. Hearing this, Zhao Xian's heart was filled with a cold smile. He did not expect that Xiaoyan would actually dare to say such shameless words at such a time. Qi, surging spiritual strength swiftly gathered on Zhao Xian's right claw. A terrifying pressure swept across the entire sky. Wherever the claw passed, the space instantly collapsed. Numerous invisible forces continuously shot above the space. The terrifying wind pressure was like a large blade that first landed on Xiaoyan's forehead. In an instant, fresh blood gushed out from Xiaoyan's forehead as though it was free of charge. However, due to the fact that Xiaoyan's spiritual strength was currently extremely weak, Xiaoyan did not notice this ordinary feeling at all. In the next instant, Zhao Xian's claw, which was wrapped in surging spiritual strength, had already arrived a few inches above Xiaoyan's head. At this moment, Xiaoyan's entire body was covered with hundreds of wounds of various sizes. Fresh blood gushed out like a fountain, completely dyeing Xiaoyan into a bloody person. Haha, you can't blame me for today's matter. You can only blame yourself for this. You were too greedy. Bang. Soon after, when Zhao Xian's claw was about to land on Xiaoyan's head, an intense bang, like a balloon bursting, suddenly resounded across the sky. At the same time, Zhao Xian's claw, which was about to land, instantly froze in midair. The greed and bloodthirstiness in Zhao Xian's pair of densely white eyes swiftly disappeared. What replaced it was a soulless emptiness. How can this be? When the last sentence that was filled with extreme unwillingness was emitted from his mouth, a cluster of pink-colored flames swiftly surged out from within Zhao Xian's body in front of Xiaoyan. At the same time, there was another cluster of invisible heavenly flame, mixed within this flame. It was the combination of the two that was able to completely wipe out Zhao Xian's consciousness in such a short instant. As the heavenly flame surged out, Zhao Xian's originally solid body swiftly became illusory. A wave of wild suction force once again surged out from Zhao Xian's abdomen, gathering all of the spiritual strength that Zhao Xian had unleashed earlier in an instant. Cough cough, haha, you even dare to randomly swallow my spiritual strength. Zhao Xian, is it you or me who is like a moth flying into a flame? Chapter 567. The curtain-like pitch-black night sky gradually emitted specks of starlight following Zhao Xian's death. The originally pressuring atmosphere that covered the sky also became relaxed. Only at this moment did Xiaoyan slowly lift his head. His pitch-black eyes looked at the distant sky above his head, at the resplendent galaxy filled with stars. Oh, is the sky already dark? A trace of surprise flashed deep within Xiaoyan's pitch-black eyes. His battle with Zhao Xian had unknowingly lasted for an entire day. Although this process was a little more difficult than Xiaoyan had originally imagined, it was fortunate that Guyu was beside him. Hence, today's matter could be considered a daunting experience without any danger. Xiaoyan let out a long sigh of relief in his heart. His tense nerves finally relaxed at this moment. However, soon after, Xiaoyan once again forcefully braced himself. Many glints shot out from deep within his eyes as his eyes slowly shifted downwards. Finally, they landed on a cream-white cluster of light that was suspended in front of him. This cluster of light was Zhao Xian's spiritual essence, which had been completely refined by the heavenly flame from the inside out. Of course, it did not only contain Zhao Xian's own spiritual strength, but it also merged with nearly all of Xiaoyan's spiritual strength. It was also because of this that Xiaoyan was able to instantly eliminate Zhao Xian's consciousness within such a short period of time. At this moment, after this cluster of spiritual essence had been refined by the heavenly flame, all that was left was the purest spiritual essence energy. The purity of this kind of spiritual essence was sufficient for anyone to easily refine it without leaving any residual effects. However, the only difference was that Zhao Xian's spiritual essence had been destroyed by Xiaoyan, causing his spiritual essence to be more or less exhausted. Hence, even though Xiaoyan was able to completely absorb this cluster of spiritual essence in front of him, he could only use most of it. Xiaoyan once again exhaled a long breath. However, he was not in a hurry to devour the spiritual essence in front of him. Instead, he forcefully supported his body and allowed himself to sit cross-legged in the empty space. No matter what, Xiaoyan needed to recover some of his physical strength at this moment. Otherwise, any haste for success might result in an irreversible change in the end result. The spiritual essence in front of him was extremely attractive to the current Xiaoyan, but Xiaoyan clearly understood that it was impossible for him to easily refine such an enormous spiritual essence energy in his current condition. In order to avoid any mistakes, it was worth it even if he had to delay a little more time. In the blink of an eye, night was about to fall. Faint fluorescent light quietly covered the entire land like a layer of frost. Another day had quietly arrived. When the first ray of morning light landed on Xiaoyan's eyelids, Xiaoyan seemed to have sensed something. His eyelids trembled slightly before he slowly opened them. An entire night of training did not allow Xiaoyan's pale face to recover much. After all, what Xiaoyan's body was lacking at this moment was spiritual strength. It was not something that could be easily made up for with some douqi. Although this was the case, it was already sufficient to allow Xiaoyan to have the ability to devour those spiritual essences. Xiaoyan exhaled faintly. His dark black eyes once again stared intently at the spiritual essence in front of him. Although the aura in his body was still weak, a fiery heat involuntarily appeared deep within Xiaoyan's eyes at this moment. Other than the spiritual strength that he originally possessed, he wondered if his spiritual strength would be able to reach the level of a rank 3 alchemist if he devoured and refined Zhao Xian's spiritual essence. Of course, this was merely Xiaoyan's subjective assumption. After all, the spiritual strength required to reach the level of a rank 3 alchemist was extremely enormous. With the experience of Guyu lending his spiritual strength, Xiaoyan knew that this spiritual strength alone was not enough to allow him to reach the level of a rank 3 alchemist. Moreover, as an alchemist, having a powerful spiritual strength was the first requirement. However, alchemy skills would still more or less give Xiaoyan, who had never come into contact with a rank 3 medicinal pill, a great amount of pressure. After all, the difficulty of refining a rank 3 medicinal pill was far greater than that of a rank 2 medicinal pill. In order to refine a rank 3 medicinal pill, not only did one have to rely on a powerful spiritual strength, but one also had to test an alchemist's superb control over flames. Xiaoyan sat in the empty space. The fiery heat that had risen in his heart had swept away all the exhaustion in his body. At this moment, Xiaoyan's face was pale, but his mental state was exceptionally good. This was mostly due to the milky white spiritual essence in front of him. A thought passed through his mind, and the spiritual bead in Xiaoyan's mind immediately trembled slightly. At the same time, the spiritual essence floating in front of Xiaoyan also moved. It seemed to be attracted by something as it approached Xiaoyan's body. The spiritual essence was the size of a football. Wisps of mist-like lines spread out from it and intertwined in front of Xiaoyan's chest. After which, they passed through the black robe that Xiaoyan was wearing, entered his skin and reached the core of his soul. Ugh! As the first wisp of spiritual essence poured into his soul, Xiaoyan's seated body involuntarily trembled slightly. At the same time, the muscles on his face trembled slightly, and he could not help but release a comfortable moan. Next, the wisps of spiritual essence were like many separated branches. They first separated, then intertwined and gathered. Finally, they poured into Xiaoyan's body. The spiritual essence that Xiaoyan had exhausted a day ago was swiftly being absorbed and refined in this seemingly slow but hurried manner. Xiaoyan's spiritual essence was swiftly recovered. Unknowingly, a day once again quietly flowed by from the tip of Xiaoyan's finger. The spiritual strength that Xiaoyan lacked within his body had already been completely recovered. Xiaoyan's expression had also turned from its initial pale and bloodless state to a sleek redness. There was also an invisible pressure that was faintly being emitted from Xiaoyan's body, causing one to not dare underestimate it. Under this continuous refinement, the spiritual essence floating in front of Xiaoyan gradually grew from the size of a football to the size of a fist on the evening of the second day. In the end, it transformed into a thumb-sized milky white light spot that was completely absorbed by Xiaoyan, who, after 2 full days of refinement, the cluster of spiritual essence in front of Xiaoyan was finally completely absorbed. At this moment, the spiritual strength that Xiaoyan possessed in his body had already reached an extremely terrifying level. Even though it was far from comparable to a rank 3 alchemist, it was likely that this level of spiritual strength was comparable to that of Su Songming. Chapter 568. When Xiaoyan once again opened his eyes, he saw a blood-red sun surrounded by a large cluster of burning clouds. It was like an overlord that had just retreated from the battlefield. The entire world knelt before it as it slowly stepped down to the west. Following the sunset, those towering mountains that were kneeling on the ground seemed to have buried their heads even deeper. A dark black shadow was left behind on this vast land. At this moment, it seemed that even those magical beasts that were hidden in the dark were quietly and respectfully sending off this blood-colored overlord. Little did they know that with the setting of the sun, this was only the beginning of another battle. Xiaoyan disdained the dark, cold atmosphere that was gradually covering the sky. Instead, he used his mind to observe the interior of his body and carefully investigated the soul bead within his mind, which had already swelled many times larger than its original size. The increase in the size of the soul bead was also a kind of affirmation of the strength of an alchemist's spiritual strength. However, Xiaoyan's heart was not very satisfied when he saw the soul bead that was currently suspended in his mind, which was many times larger than before. It was unexpected that his spiritual strength had yet to touch the barrier of a rank 3 alchemist after refining the spiritual essence of an elite Do-Di. This involuntarily caused Xiaoyan to feel a little disappointed. However, Xiaoyan had only considered his own thoughts. He did not think about what other alchemists would think if they were to sense the thoughts in Xiaoyan's heart. Within a short 2 days, his spiritual strength had swiftly soared from the level of a rank 2 middle-stage alchemist to the level of a rank 2 late-stage alchemist. This kind of frightening growth speed would cause anyone who saw it to involuntarily let out a sigh. Instead, it was Xiaoyan who actually felt dissatisfaction in his heart. "Tisich, you little fellow. You should be satisfied. You have already grown to such an extent, yet you are still not satisfied. If the other rank 2 alchemists were to know of this, they would definitely kill you." Xiaoyan's heart stilled. Only then did he smile in an embarrassed manner. After which, he joked with Guyu in his body, "Old Gu, you are being too serious. Old Bone, aren't your words a bit too heavy? They're tier 2 alchemists at any rate. Even if they're unwilling in their hearts, how could they make a move to kill me? It's true that you're a tier 2 alchemist, but a tier 2 alchemist as young as you, I'm afraid that you can't even find a few in the entire continent. If those old fellows knew what you're thinking in your heart right now, even if they don't kill you just based on their man-eating gazes, it's enough to make you suffer." Guyu coldly mocked. Xiaoyan was involuntarily startled. He quietly imagined a scene where a large group of tier 2 alchemists surrounded him and looked at him with strange eyes. Even with Xiaoyan's mental fortitude, he still involuntarily shivered when he thought of this. That kind of scene was quite horrifying. After recovering, Xiaoyan stopped thinking about it. In any case, no matter what he thought, how could those old fellows know that Xiaoyan could no longer resist trying out the enormous spiritual strength that he had just refined? A thought passed through Xiaoyan's mind, and the dark black soul bead within his mind immediately began to tremble. It emitted a buzzing sound in an invisible manner. At the same time, a majestic spiritual strength immediately swept out. Xiaoyan turned his gaze and immediately aimed it at a towering mountain peak. The entire mountain peak could be said to be an extremely eye-catching existence within the nearby mountain range. Therefore, Xiaoyan aimed his gaze at it at a glance. "Go." After this word sounded in Xiaoyan's heart, an invisible spiritual pillar carried an extremely frightening aura and pressure as it cut through the empty space in the blink of an eye. Even though the spiritual strength was untraceable, it still emitted a deafening sonic boom when it cut through the empty space. Soon after, one could hear an earth-shaking bang. That majestic mountain peak had been forcefully severed from top to bottom by Xiaoyan's spiritual pillar. The entire mountain peak was also separated to the two sides, leaving behind a 100,000-foot-tall cliff that connected the sky and the earth at the middle of the mountain peak. With just a single strike, a towering mountain peak was forcefully split into two. Wherever the spiritual pillar passed, a smooth mirror-like crack was left behind on the mountain peak. Hiss! Even Xiaoyan himself involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air when he saw this scene. Xiaoyan had used less than 1,000th of his spiritual strength in the attack just now. Even though this was the case, the strength that he had displayed was still frighteningly strong. This level of spiritual strength was likely sufficient to allow Xiaoyan to easily fight against an ordinary bandit without using Do Qi. Just thinking about this caused Xiaoyan's heart to involuntarily feel a fiery heat. If even his spiritual strength was strong to such an extent, he might even be able to fight against an ordinary elite Do Di if his Do Qi was added. Tisich brat, don't be too optimistic. The old me has already told you not to underestimate any Do Di. Even if it is a seriously injured Do Di, you must not underestimate him. Otherwise there might not be anyone who will help you the next time. However, Guyu, who was within Xiaoyan's body, once again poured a basin of cold water over him when this crazy thought rose in his heart. This caused Xiaoyan, who had yet to go down the wrong path, to swiftly wake up. Xiaoyan could only smile in an embarrassed manner after hearing Guyu's words. He understood in his heart that Guyu had said these words for his own good. Hence, regardless of what the other party said, Xiaoyan could only try his best to reflect on himself. He did not doubt the other party's words. After all, given Guyu's strength, there was no need for him to lie to him. Moreover, Zhao Xian's example had perfectly verified Guyu's words. Xiaoyan withdrew the spiritual strength that he had spread out. He flipped his hand and a snow-white storage ring appeared in his palm. This storage ring was the storage ring that originally belonged to Zhao Xian. However, now that Zhao Xian had completely turned into dust, this storage ring naturally belonged to Xiaoyan. After Zhao Xian's death, the spiritual imprint that originally covered the storage ring quietly disappeared. Xiaoyan's spiritual strength was able to easily pour into it. When Xiaoyan had just poured his spiritual strength into the storage ring in his hand, a thread of undetectable glint flashed deep within Xiaoyan's eyes. Soon after, Xiaoyan's spiritual strength poured into the storage ring and left behind his spiritual imprint. All the items within the storage ring appeared in front of Xiaoyan's eyes. Xiao Yan's eyes immediately revealed an extremely excited expression when he saw the dazzling array of treasures in front of him. An elite Dodi was indeed extraordinary. The collection within this storage ring was not something that an ordinary bandit could compare with. Most of the chi methods, do skills, and some natural treasures were treasures that could move Xiao Yan's heart. This was especially the case after he saw many of the medicinal ingredients that he could use to refine the ice spirit pill and the Bodhi returning pill. Xiao Yan felt an incomparable joy in his heart. It must be said that he had gained a lot this time around. Chapter 569. Looking around the space within the storage ring, the expression in Xiao Yan's eyes became increasingly excited. When his gaze shifted, a white jade box also appeared in front of Xiao Yan's eyes. Extreme Transformation Pill. As the jade box that contained the Extreme Transformation Pill was relatively special, Xiao Yan had also paid more attention to it when he was in the auction house. At this moment he recognized it at a glance. The thing that was contained within this jade box was naturally the Extreme Transformation Pill. In the outside world, when Xiao Yan withdrew his mind, a thought passed through his mind and the jade box appeared in Xiao Yan's hand. Although they were separated by the jade box, Xiao Yan was still able to smell the pill fragrance that seeped out from within. Immediately, a cool feeling surged into Xiao Yan's limbs and bones, causing him to feel extremely refreshed. It is indeed worthy of being a Tier 4 medicinal pill. Even the pill fragrance possesses such a dense medicinal strength. It is really unbelievable. After letting out an exclamation in his mouth, Xiao Yan ceased hesitating and opened the lid of the jade box. Immediately, a dense cloud-like pill fragrance swiftly spread out from the interior of the jade box. It surrounded Xiao Yan's body and gradually spread out. The pill fragrance spread and the sight in front of Xiao Yan's eyes was temporarily blocked. Xiao Yan smiled slightly in the face of this. A brilliant flame immediately surged from deep within his eyes. Immediately, the pill fragrance in front of his eyes was pushed aside by an invisible strength. The pill fragrance scattered and the medicinal pill within the jade box also appeared in front of Xiao Yan's eyes. Xiao Yan's expression changed slightly. The dense white medicinal pill was like an ice crystal lying within the jade box. Just by looking at it with the naked eye, Xiao Yan seemed to be able to sense the powerful medicinal strength contained within this medicinal pill. TSK, just such a small medicinal pill is actually able to make up for a few hundred years of training time for an elite Dodi. No wonder they would not hesitate to use such a great price to exchange for it. His mouth once again exclaimed in surprise. However, when the words from Xiao Yan's mouth sounded, the corner of his mouth was lifted into a mocking smile. Although this extreme transformation pill was quite valuable and those elite Dodi had spent all their money, it still ended up in his hands. Who could have imagined such an outcome? Xiao Yan's lingering gaze paused on the medicinal pill within the jade box for a long time. However, in the end he still kept it. The principle of not revealing one's wealth was something that Xiao Yan also understood. Even though there was no one else in his surroundings at this moment, who knew if this pill fragrance would attract some strong person's attention? After keeping the medicinal pill, Xiao Yan did not stop. His dark black eyes slightly rotated. With a thought of Xiao Yan's mind, threads of dark black energy gathered around him. Immediately, under Zhao's control. Next it is time to take a look at this. Haha. Xiao Yan revealed an excited expression on his face. His eyes immediately swept over the 7 tents in front of him. After which, he carefully observed the 7 tents in front of him. A moment later, Xiao Yan, who originally had an amazed expression, began to knit his brows tightly. A puzzled expression surged onto his face. Although he could clearly sense that the great Tao strength that he controlled had greatly increased, there did not seem to be any other difference other than being able to form an additional tent. Elder Gu, do you know what's going on? Helpless, Xiao Yan could only seek help from Guyu. After all, the only person who could answer all of his questions was Guyu. Brat, everyone says that it is not easy to train in the great Tao strength. However, from the looks of it, it does not appear that you have much difficulty. Xiao Yan was immediately startled when a somewhat teasing voice was transmitted over. He could not help but raise his eyebrows and ask. Old Gu, do you mean? Let's not talk about the 7th tent. Let's talk about the first 6 tents. Do you know that even some people who have comprehended the great Tao strength for a long time might not be able to form 6 tents? Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily hardened when he heard this. While he was surprised in his heart, Guyu continued to speak. Everyone knows that it is not easy to comprehend the great Tao strength. However, they do not know that it is even more difficult to train in the great Tao strength. A white light immediately rose from the surface of Xiaoyan's body after his words sounded. Soon after, Guyu's figure shot out from Xiaoyan's body and stood in the void in front of Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan raised his eyebrows when he saw this. However, he did not speak. Guyu's deep eyes landed on the 7 tents in front of him. Normally speaking, those who have just comprehended the power of the way are usually able to use the power of the way to condense a tent. Of course, normally speaking, they can only condense one strand. As for 2 or 3, it means that they have a decent aptitude for comprehending the power of the way. As for more, it means that they have a great aptitude for comprehending the power of the way. Talent? Isn't it said that the great Tao strength can only be comprehended through pure comprehension? Why is there a talent? Xiaoyan could not help but be startled when he heard the so-called talent in comprehending. After which, he lifted his head to look at Guyu and asked with a frown. That is true. The great Tao strength can only be increased by relying on one's comprehension. However, whether one can comprehend it or not also depends on one's innate condition. This is certain. Otherwise, how could there be so many people who are unable to comprehend the great Tao strength? The reason for this is one's innate condition. In other words, one's talent. Xiaoyan nodded when he heard this. However, there was still some confusion on his face. If this was the case, the training of the great Tao strength was not much different from Doqi. The only difference was that it was a different method. Guyu seemed to have sensed the doubt in Xiaoyan's heart. He moved his feet and arrived in front of a tent. He extended 2 fingers, twisted his wrist, and pressed on the tent in front of him. At the same time, Guyu continued to speak. The so-called innate condition is like your background. Xiaoyan's eyes suddenly shifted the moment Guyu attacked. At the same time, Guyu's voice was transmitted into his ear. Some people have noble backgrounds. The faction they belong to is the #1 superfaction on the continent the moment they are born. Not only will this person's future path be smooth and worry-free, but they will also have supreme chi methods and do skills to practice. On the other hand, some people might die the moment they are born. This is the innate condition. Guyu's 2 fingers violently pressed on the tent in front of him after his words sounded. Immediately, circular intense ripples spread from the tent. Even the surrounding empty space began to ripple. Xiaoyan's expression changed slightly on the other side. Soon after, he saw a dense white light suddenly flicker at the spot where Guyu's fingers touched his tent. Immediately, a circular dense white flame ripple swept out. In the blink of an eye, it agglomerated into a fire tent. This is Great Tao of Fire. Chapter 570. Yes. Hearing Xiaoyan's low voice, the old man's tone did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. He hurriedly nodded heavily at Xiaoyan. If the black-robed young man in front of him was really a rank 3 alchemist, then just the latter's identity was enough to make him bow and bend his knees. Seeing this, Xiaoyan's eyes involuntarily flickered slightly. A wave of joy immediately rose from the bottom of his heart. Although Xiaoyan did not know exactly what kind of things were described on the list within the word, have, at the very least it gave Xiaoyan some hope. Finally, after searching bitterly for a month, the heavens did not disappoint those who persevered, allowing Xiaoyan to witness the results. Of course, even though Xiaoyan was extremely surprised in his heart, he still revealed an indifferent expression on his face, causing others to be unable to tell what exactly Xiaoyan was feeling in his heart at this moment. This point also caused the old man in front of Xiaoyan's eyes to focus slightly. He could not help but be secretly surprised in his heart. He did not expect that this black-robed young man in front of him not only had great ability, but even his temperament was also so calm. He did not show his emotions on his face. This kind of person was the most terrifying because one would never be able to see through the other party's face. Yes. How many types do you have? His pitch-black eyes flickered slightly. Xiaoyan pretended to be calm as he opened his mouth to ask once again. Hearing this, the old man withdrew his pair of turbid old eyes, which were originally staring at Xiaoyan's face. He paused for a moment before respectfully cupping his hands toward Xiaoyan in an apologetic manner. Only then did he let out a dry laugh and said with an apologetic face, "Brother Xiaoyan, you are the one who has been waiting for a long time. Sir, because the value of these things that you need is too high, even my 4-way pavilion is unable to gather all of them. Currently, my 4-way pavilion only has 3 types of medicinal ingredients in stock. As for the rest, my 4-way pavilion does not have them." At the end of his words, the old man's face involuntarily revealed an apologetic expression. He gently shook his head at Xiaoyan and frowned slightly as he spoke. Facing a rank 3 alchemist, the old man's heart was incomparably nervous. After all, this kind of person was someone that even a Dodi had to greet with a smiling face. If he did not receive him well, forget about how the black-robed young man in front of him would treat him. Once this matter was known by the upper echelons of the clan, it was likely that he would also be banished from the clan. Thinking until this point, the old man's expression became even more respectful. Even his breathing had become careful. Seeing the old man reveal this manner, Xiaoyan's expression was unconcerned. However, in his heart he immediately felt a wild joy at this moment. Xiaoyan originally thought that even if he could find the things that he wanted in this four-way pavilion, there would at most be one or two types. After all, it was just as the old man in front of him had said. The things that Xiaoyan needed could be called priceless treasures. It was impossible for an ordinary faction to possess them. Even if they did, there would only be one type. Moreover, it would be the type that would be completely hidden away. It was impossible for an outsider to know about it, much less take it out and openly sell it. However, the answer that the old man gave Xiaoyan caused Xiaoyan's heart to be filled with joy and incomparable surprise. However, from this, Xiaoyan could also see that this so-called four-way pavilion was likely not some ordinary faction. Otherwise, how would it be possible for it to possess the three types of medicinal ingredients on Xiaoyan's list at the same time? Those medicinal ingredients? Xiaoyan's hands were behind his back. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the old man in front of him. As he spoke, his hands, which were behind his back and covered by his sleeves, slowly clenched together. The emotions in his heart gradually became nervous. When the old man saw that Xiaoyan had opened his mouth again, a smile hurriedly appeared on his old face. He hurriedly said, "Sir, the medicinal ingredients that you want are currently in our four-way pavilion. Haha, I will order someone to bring them over." At the same time the old man's words sounded, he swiftly called an attendant forward. Under Xiaoyan's gaze, the old man's face carried a solemn expression as he spoke a few words to the attendant by the side. After ordering him to go and return quickly, he turned his eyes to Xiaoyan with a face full of smiles. He cupped his hands together and said with a smile, "It will take some time for the medicinal ingredients to be brought over. During this period of time, Sir can still take a look around. Other than the medicinal ingredients on your list, our pavilion also has other high-tier medicinal ingredients. If Sir takes a fancy to them, feel free to pick them." When he said this, the old man's face could not help but reveal a confident expression. Very obviously, he also had quite a lot of confidence in the items in his four-way pavilion, even if the black-robed young man in front of him was a rank 3 alchemist. Hearing this, Xiaoyan's eyes flickered slightly. His heart could not help but move slightly. When Xiaoyan had just arrived on the second floor, he had already smelled an extremely rich medicinal fragrance from the air. This smell was extremely familiar to Xiaoyan. Other than some top-grade medicinal ingredients, there was nothing else that could emit such a rich medicinal fragrance. As his gaze moved, Xiaoyan's eyes swiftly darted around the various counters in the hall. In just a moment, Xiaoyan's pitch-black eyes were filled with a fiery glow. Dragon-attaching branch, strange flower fruit, soul-nurturing grass. TSK. If these items were placed in the outside world, they would be able to cause a huge commotion. I never expected that they would actually be placed so casually here. Seeing those rare medicinal ingredients that even he had only heard of, Xiaoyan could not help but feel shocked by the background of this four-way pavilion. Just what kind of faction was this to be able to randomly place these things, which could normally be called priceless treasures, in this place for others to sell? This kind of thing caused even Xiaoyan to feel a deep shock in his heart. Seeing these medicinal ingredients placed so casually on the counter, Xiaoyan could not help but want to buy them all in one go. However, after a struggle in his heart, Xiaoyan finally calmed down. However, at the same time, while Xiaoyan was excitedly looking at the medicinal ingredients on the counter, an old man in a long white robe stared straight at Xiaoyan. Some strange colors surged in the depths of his deep eyes. Immediately, he moved his feet and walked out of the four-way pavilion without anyone noticing. When the old man had already left the four-way pavilion and appeared on the street outside, Xiaoyan, who was looking at the medicinal ingredients at the counter, finally slowly straightened his body. His eyes were filled with suspicion as they slowly swept across the place. Immediately, Xiaoyan took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes. Previously, Xiaoyan had clearly felt an extremely obscure aura enveloping his body. That aura clearly wanted to investigate something from Xiaoyan's body. However, at this moment, that aura had actually suddenly disappeared. This caused Xiaoyan to feel a little puzzled. Chapter 571. The next day. When the morning light shone on the earth, Xiaoyan also gradually woke up from a night of cultivation. His eyelids trembled slightly. The moment Xiaoyan opened his eyes, A brilliant flame flashed across the depths of Xiaoyan's eyes. After a night of cultivation, Xiaoyan did not feel the slightest bit tired. On the contrary, it made him feel even more energetic. Xiaoyan's body shook slightly as he stood up. Immediately, a wave of firecracker-like crackling sound was emitted from all over his body. The corner of Xiaoyan's mouth was involuntarily lifted into an arc as he sensed the refreshing feeling that was emitted from within his body. He immediately moved his body and flew toward the northern sky. Now that Murong Chanshan's matter had come to an end, Xiaoyan should start on his own matters. According to the original plan, Xiaoyan should head to the Western Wastelands region at this moment. However, he had not obtained the most important icy spirit liquid to refine the icy spirit pill. For the sake of the icy spirit liquid, Xiaoyan decided to temporarily stay in the Shilin region. Furthermore, other than that, the other medicinal ingredients needed to refine the icy spirit pill still required Xiaoyan to spend time to find. Rather than painstakingly searching in the Western Wastelands region, perhaps Xiaoyan would have a greater chance of finding them in the Shilin region. However, at the same time, Xiaoyan was afraid that he would have to face the four great sects head-on. In the following period of time, Xiaoyan continuously shuttled back and forth between the few nearby cities. On one hand, he searched for information about the remaining medicinal ingredients. On the other hand, he also inquired about some natural treasures that could increase spiritual force. Now, if Xiaoyan wanted to increase his spiritual force, there were only two methods he could follow. The first was to use a secret art and slowly cultivate. At the cost of time, he could cultivate his spiritual force for a long period of time. Of course, this method could indeed be said to be seeking victory through stability, but it would take too long. Even with Xiaoyan's temperament, he could not wait for 10 or 100 years of boring cultivation. As for the second method, it was to use heavenly treasures to achieve the effect of rapidly increasing one's soul strength. Compared to the first method, although the probability of finding this method was not high, the effect was more obvious. It was the choice of most alchemists and array masters. The current Xiaoyan didn't have the patience to cultivate his spiritual strength. Therefore, he focused all his attention on the second method. Even if the chances were small, Xiaoyan still wanted to give it a try. A month later, Xiaoyan, who had been searching everywhere, finally arrived in front of a city. At this moment, Xiaoyan's pitch-black eyes finally revealed some exhaustion. After a month of searching all over the place, Xiaoyan was disappointed time and time again. In a month's time, Xiaoyan had visited dozens of big and small cities, but the results were still disappointing. Besides finding 3 medicinal ingredients, Xiaoyan was unable to find anything else. With regards to the main medicinal ingredients for the ice spirit pill and the Bodhi returning pill, Xiaoyan also did not have any information. As for the heavenly treasure that could increase one's spiritual force, it was even more impossible to find. At this moment, Xiaoyan lifted his head to look at the ancient city in front of him. He could not help but use his hand to forcefully rub his face. With the last bit of hope in his heart, his body moved as he flew towards the city in front of him. Cold Stream City. As he softly muttered these words, Xiaoyan's eyes slowly shifted away from the city gates. With one hand he tugged at the black robes on his body. Only then did his figure move as he followed the surrounding crowd into the city. The area of Cold Stream City was not small. Even when compared to Yen City, it was not inferior in size. In this area, Coldstream City was also the largest city, and this was also the reason why it was so prosperous. After entering the city, the enormous outline of the city appeared before Xiaoyan's eyes. The seemingly endless streets in front of him also showed how enormous Coldstream City was. However, to Xiaoyan all of this was not attractive at all. Xiaoyan's gaze was only focused on those shops, and whether they had the medicinal ingredients that he needed. Similar to his actions in the previous month, Xiaoyan's target was the shops in the city. Of course, as he passed by, he did not forget to sweep his gaze across the street vendors. Many times he would find things that one would not expect from these street vendors. Since Xiaoyan had experienced this before, he naturally would not miss this opportunity. However, it was a pity that finding amazing treasures from street vendors did not happen often. Even though Xiaoyan had visited all the street vendors in the past month, he still did not find anything. This time was no exception. Sigh. As he laughed bitterly in his heart, Xiaoyan understood that he had indeed been a little too impatient. Following the flow of people, Xiaoyan walked for a long time until a splendidly decorated large shop appeared before his eyes. Only then did the expression on Xiaoyan's face change. Four-way pavilion, what an extravagant name. However, I wonder if there is anything that I need here. Seeing the huge square-shaped building in front of him, which did indeed live up to its name, A sigh involuntarily surged into Xiaoyan's eyes. Hopefully, he would be able to find the thing that he needed in this place. Even if it was just one thing, it was enough to cause Xiaoyan to feel excited. When Xiaoyan stepped into the pavilion, the noise from the outside world instantly decreased by more than half. When Xiaoyan's body had completely stepped into this four-way pavilion, all the noise from the outside world had completely disappeared. At the same time, when Xiaoyan raised his eyes to take a look, the atmosphere in the pavilion involuntarily made him feel a little strange. Under normal circumstances, the people who ran a shop, regardless of whether they were the shop's attendants or the owner, should be courteous to their customers. However, looking at the situation before him, Xiaoyan could not help but frown. Although there were over 10 people choosing items in front of the counter in the hall, the attendants actually completely ignored these so-called customers. Instead, they appeared to be somewhat impatient. In fact, there were even a few bad-tempered attendants who actually pointed at a few customers and urged them in a loud voice with a displeased expression. Moreover, from the looks of it, they were simply planning to force a sale. Although the customers were somewhat dissatisfied with this, when their eyes noticed an old man with his eyes shut in the hall, they could only bitterly clench their teeth. However, they did not say anything else. Instead, they randomly chose a few items, hastily paid the bill and left. When they saw the few people leave, the attendants sneered and mocked them. At the same time, their poisonous snake-like sharp eyes quickly landed on Xiaoyan's body. At this moment, the few customers just so happened to pass by Xiaoyan. When they saw the confused face of Xiaoyan, the few of them involuntarily cast a pitiful gaze at him. Immediately, they did not dare to say anything else. After hurriedly bypassing Xiaoyan, they swiftly left this four-way pavilion. Chapter 572. Hee, another one has come to give me money. Diske, who knows if this brat is a pauper? He dares to barge into my four-way pavilion. No one has ever dared to approach my four-way pavilion, unless... A few servants with sinister smiles on their faces secretly muttered something. At the end of their words, their slightly fearful gazes landed on the old man who was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed in the middle of the hall. Tisk, let's not talk about this first. Let's talk about this brat now. I'll make a bet with you. If he has money and can afford anything here, I'll lose an emperor-grade medicinal pill to you. If he doesn't, at most I'll compensate you with one. No, I want the girl you got yesterday. That little girl looks so fresh. I'm afraid you've scared her a lot. A coarse and lewd laughter spread throughout the hall. At the same time, it also caused the other servants to smile. As for the few young girls among the guests, after hearing these words, their pretty faces quickly turned red. They cast disdainful gazes at the two servants who spoke. Where did this stinking girl come from? She dares to stare at me. She deserves to be beaten. Noticing the resentful gazes of the few young girls, the servant laughed coldly. His face immediately revealed a displeased expression. The figure that was originally sitting on the counter instantly flashed and appeared in front of a young girl. With a wave of his hand, a slap ruthlessly landed. This sudden scene caused the young girl to instantly turn pale with fright. The man beside her, on the other hand, revealed a grave expression. His body moved and he braced himself to charge forward. You want to be a hero and save the beauty? Get lost. In response, the servant sneered. His body that was stopped in midair suddenly twisted. Immediately after, a heavy whip kick ruthlessly smashed onto the chest of the man in front of him. With just one blow he was sent flying. When the man was sent flying, it was unknown whether it was intentional or not, but the direction he flew in was actually towards Xiaoyan, who was standing at the same spot. With a sneer, the servant with a sinister face leaped back. At the same time, he pricked up his ears and turned his back to Xiaoyan, as if he was listening to Xiaoyan's situation. However, the scene that happened in the next moment caused the sneer on the servant's face to quickly change. At the same time, the expressions of the others in the arena also changed. At this moment, Xiaoyan's face was calm. A thought passed through his heart and an invisible spiritual strength had already swept out, easily catching the human figure that had shot over in midair. The expression in everyone's eyes involuntarily changed when they saw this scene. At this moment, even the old man, who had been sitting cross-legged with his eyes shut, suddenly opened his turbid old eyes at this moment. His eyes contained surprise as he looked at Xiaoyan. His somewhat hoarse voice was filled with surprise as he said, "What are you talking about? An alchemist? Or an array master?" Xiaoyan did not comment on this. He did not even care about the old man's question. With a thought, he slowly put down the man who was gently caught by soul strength. Seeing that Xiaoyan actually ignored him, the old man could not help but narrow his old eyes. His turbid old eyes flashed. He slowly took a breath and spoke again in a deep voice. Who are you? If you are here to cause trouble, then you have picked the wrong place. As his words fell, the old man slowly stood up. At the same time, a majestic aura spread out from the old man's body, causing everyone's expressions to change except for Xiaoyan. I'm not here to cause trouble. It's just that I don't like others attacking me for no reason. Xiaoyan's expression did not change in the slightest because of this aura. At the same time, his pitch-black eyes looked at the servant who had just attacked. Humph. With a soft snort, a solemn expression flashed across the old man's face. Xiaoyan's relaxed expression made him feel a faintly discernible pressure. Swoosh! In the next instant, a sharp sound of thunder suddenly resounded in the hall. At the same time, the old man's expression could not help but change. However, before he could react, a violent bang resounded in the hall. Immediately, the old man and the others in the hall only reacted at this moment. When they turned their heads to look, they saw that Xiaoyan was standing where the servant who attacked just now was standing. As for the servant, he had already been mercilessly stepped on by Xiaoyan. His aura was extremely weak and it was obvious that he was not far from death. This person, what a terrifying speed. The moment he saw Xiaoyan, the old man's eyes suddenly shrunk. An extremely shocked expression appeared on his old face. Traces of cold sweat slowly flowed down from his forehead. The old man was unconcerned about the life and death of that attendant. However, the thing that caused his heart to feel incomparably shocked was that Xiaoyan in front of him was actually able to instantly step on that attendant under his feet without him being able to react. This kind of shocking, frightening speed really caused the old man's heart to be incomparably shocked. Since you are not a shop, you don't have the medicinal ingredients that I need. I think that I have indeed come to the wrong place. After saying these words casually, Xiaoyan ignored the terrified gazes of the surrounding people. He moved his feet and was about to walk out of the square pavilion. Mister, at this moment the old man's voice sounded again. In order to show his respect, the old man called Xiaoyan Mister. What? You want to attack me after I hit your man? Hearing this, Xiaoyan said in a somewhat impatient manner. A month's time had already wasted quite a bit of Xiaoyan's patience. The old man before him truly caused him to feel a bit of disgust. If this guy dared to speak any more nonsense, Xiaoyan would definitely not be stingy and attack him. It was merely a 9-star half-martial emperor. To the current Xiaoyan there was nothing to be afraid of. The old man was momentarily stunned by Xiaoyan's impatient tone. After that, he hurriedly came back to his senses. A smile hurriedly appeared on his aged face. He cupped his hands toward Xiaoyan and said with a smile, Mister, don't joke around. What happened earlier was merely a small misunderstanding. However, since Mister said that you have come to purchase medicinal ingredients, then you have naturally come to the right place to come to our square pavilion. As he said those words, the old man raised his hand, extended his palm and pointed to a staircase that led to the second floor. The first floor is merely a floor that our square pavilion casually opened to the outside world. There is nothing valuable here. As for the second floor, it is a pavilion specially opened for high-level half-martial emperors. Only there will be true treasures. Of course, although it is a floor specially opened for high-level half-martial emperors, since Mister is an alchemist, you will naturally be able to enter it. After the old man's words left his mouth, Xiaoyan, who had already walked to the entrance of the square pavilion, stopped his footsteps. After that, he slowly turned around. Following the old man's finger, his gaze landed on the staircase that led to the second floor. Indeed, Xiaoyan was able to sense a formless power at that place. That sort of power was something that only 5-star half-martial emperors and above could pass through. Of course, with Xiaoyan's soul strength, he would naturally be able to pass through it easily. It was no wonder that the old man would say those words. Sensing this, Xiaoyan's gaze flickered slightly. After pondering for a moment, he finally raised his foot again and slowly walked towards the staircase that led to the second floor. Chapter 573. The emotion in the old man's heart finally calmed down when he saw Xiaoyan lift his foot and walk toward the tunnel. He immediately turned his gaze, and his face was cold as he looked at the remaining few attendants. He angrily reprimanded. You blind thing, why aren't you dragging this bastard away? He's making a fool of himself here. In the future he doesn't need to stay in the family anymore. He can go to the mercenary team outside the city. The expressions on the faces of the few attendants swiftly changed when they heard the furious reprimand. Their faces carried a dense fear. After which, they hurriedly walked to the front of the attendant who had fainted after being stomped by Xiaoyan. On one hand, they felt sorrow for this fellow in their hearts, while on the other, they also bitterly looked at each other and rejoiced in their hearts. Although the mercenary group outside the city was also formed by a group of half-emperor experts, their hunting targets were also not weak. Under normal circumstances, it was nothing much to encounter a low-level half-emperor level magical beast. However, they were afraid of those high-level magical beasts. Those fellows were terrifyingly strong. Their mercenary group had been unable to return from the hands of magical beasts of that level several times. At this moment, this old man's punishment was equivalent to pushing them to a dead end. Xiaoyan, who had just walked to the entrance of the stairs, could not help but pause his footsteps after hearing the old man's words. He turned his head slightly and narrowed his eyes as he looked at the old man with interest. The old man's action had undoubtedly caused Xiaoyan to have no reason to continue attacking. However, at the same time, it could be said that he had helped Xiaoyan vent his anger. Since both of them had a way out, Xiaoyan could no longer open his mouth to say anything. The old man appeared to have sensed Xiaoyan's gaze. The fierceness that was revealed on his old face a moment ago disappeared in an instant. Instead, it was replaced by a warm smile. The old man cupped his hands to Xiaoyan and said with a smile on his face, "According to the rules of the pavilion, it is inconvenient for this old man to accompany you. Mister, please go up to the second floor alone. There will naturally be someone up there to receive you." Upon hearing this, Xiaoyan once again glanced at the old man. Light flickered in his eyes. Soon after, he no longer paid any attention to the old man. With a light lift of his feet, he moved towards the second floor. It wasn't until Xiaoyan's figure disappeared at the top of the stairs that the old man withdrew his gaze. His pair of old eyes revealed a trace of solemnity. Although he didn't know who this black-robed youth was from the other party's spiritual strength, he could tell that he was a rank 2 alchemist. Not bad, even he couldn't easily touch an alchemist of this level. After glaring at the attendants again, the old man retracted his gaze hatefully. With a wave of his sleeve, he once again sat cross-legged in the hall. As for the others, they took advantage of this time to leave the Four Directions Pavilion. After stepping onto the second floor, Xiaoyan spread out his spiritual strength. Immediately he was able to detect many experts with powerful auras. On the second floor there were a total of 3 9-star half-martial emperors. As for the others, even the weakest among them was a 6-star half-martial emperor. When Xiaoyan appeared on the second floor, the crowd present all turned their curious gazes to Xiaoyan. Immediately, astonishment flashed past the eyes of many people present. Never would they have imagined that the person who had stepped onto the second floor of the Four Directions Pavilion would be such a young person. One must know that the rules of the Four Directions Pavilion were very strict. Even though the owner of the Four Directions Pavilion rarely bothered with the first floor, the second floor was not a place that just anyone could enter. If one wanted to enter the second floor of the Four Directions Pavilion, one must either possess a strength of at least a 6-star half-martial emperor or possess an extremely powerful spiritual strength. At the very least, one must be a rank 2 alchemist or a formation master. However, at this moment, no matter how the crowd thought about it, they were unable to imagine how this seemingly young black-gowned young man would be able to meet the 2 requirements. However, at the same time, the crowd also understood that since this person was able to step onto the second floor with such graceful footsteps, it was likely that the person on the first floor had already personally tested him. Otherwise, this black-gowned young man before them would definitely not appear here. However, other than those surprised gazes, the expression in the eyes of a certain old man in the square involuntarily hardened when he saw Xiaoyan. An extremely obscure glint instantly flashed deep within his turbid old eyes. Soon after, he recovered his calmness. Xiaoyan did not discover this small change. After ignoring the astonished gazes of the crowd, he raised his foot and walked toward a counter with relatively fewer people in the hall. Only at this moment did the crowd come back to their senses. Soon after, a white-haired old man quickly walked toward Xiaoyan with a face full of smiles. He first cupped his hands in an extremely courteous manner. After that, with a face full of smiles, he warmly smiled at Xiaoyan and said, "Ha, mister, do you need to purchase something? This old man is the manager of this place. If mister needs anything, please feel free to ask. As long as it is something that my Four Directions Pavilion can afford, we will definitely not be stingy." Hearing this, Xiaoyan's expression did not change much. After seeing the group of people on the first floor, Xiaoyan did not believe that the group of people before him would be any better than them. However, regardless of what Xiaoyan was thinking at this moment, the words from the old man's mouth were what Xiaoyan wanted to hear the most right now. A thought passed through Xiaoyan's mind. He extended 2 of his fingers and gently shook them in the empty space in front of him. Immediately, A piece of parchment filled with various natural treasures appeared in Xiaoyan's hand. Do you have the items on this list? Xiaoyan casually handed the list in his hand to the old man in front of him as he asked with an indifferent expression. Although Xiaoyan's words appeared to be spoken in a relaxed manner with an extremely calm manner, as though the things on this list were dispensable and unimportant, the old man in front of him did not know just how anxious Xiaoyan's heart was at this moment. Facing this kind of old fox, if Xiaoyan really revealed the true thoughts in his heart on his face, he would undoubtedly be asked for an exorbitant price by this old man. On the contrary, if Xiaoyan's expression was calm, this old man would not dare to casually raise the price. Xiaoyan had seen many people like this who would raise the price on the spot. Of course, even though his expression did not change as if he did not care at all, Xiaoyan was extremely concerned in his heart. After all, this was a big matter that concerned whether he could enter the rank 3 alchemist or not. Whether it was the 2 medicinal pills or the spiritual force, Xiaoyan could not remain calm. After receiving the list, the old man's turbid gaze first randomly swept over it. Immediately following this, a surprise involuntarily flashed across his pair of old eyes. At the same time that his expression changed slightly, the old man raised his gaze and immediately looked at Xiaoyan. He asked in a solemn voice, "Xiaoyan, what are you doing? You are a rank 3 alchemist?" Hearing this, the expression in Xiaoyan's eyes was slightly startled at first, but soon after he looked at the old man without commenting and asked in a deep voice, "Just tell me, do you have the items on this list here?" Seeing Xiaoyan's appearance, the old man did not dare to underestimate him. From the medicinal ingredients on the list, it was not difficult to see that the medicinal pill that was being refined was undoubtedly a rank 3 medicinal pill. Seeing Xiaoyan's appearance, then his guess was not wrong. Without hesitation, the old man quickly nodded his head and said with certainty, "Sir, we do." Chapter 574. Yes. Hearing Xiaoyan's low voice, the old man's tone did not dare to be the slightest bit negligent. He hurriedly nodded heavily at Xiaoyan. If the black-robed young man in front of him was really a rank 3 alchemist, then just the latter's identity was enough to make the old man bow and bend his knees. Seeing this, Xiaoyan's eyes could not help but flicker slightly. A wave of joy immediately rose from the bottom of his heart. Although Xiaoyan did not know exactly what kind of things were described on the list within the word, have, at the very least it gave Xiaoyan some hope. Finally, after searching bitterly for a month, the heavens did not disappoint those who persevered, allowing Xiaoyan to witness the results. Of course, even though Xiaoyan was extremely surprised in his heart, he still revealed an indifferent expression on his face. No one was able to tell what exactly Xiaoyan was feeling in his heart at this moment. This point also caused the old man in front of Xiaoyan's eyes to focus slightly. He could not help but be secretly surprised in his heart. He did not expect that this black-robed young man in front of him not only had great ability, but also had such a calm temperament. He did not show his emotions on his face. This kind of person was the most terrifying because one would never be able to see through the other party's face. "How many do you have?" Xiaoyan's pitch-black eyes flickered slightly. He pretended to be calm as he opened his mouth to ask again. Hearing this, the old man withdrew his pair of turbid old eyes, which were originally staring at Xiaoyan's face. He paused for a moment before respectfully cupping his hands toward Xiaoyan in an apologetic manner. Only then did he let out a dry laugh and said with an apologetic face, "Brother Xiaoyan, you are the one who has been waiting for a long time. Sir, because the value of these things that you need is too high, even my 4-way pavilion is unable to gather all of them. Currently, my 4-way pavilion only has 3 of the medicinal ingredients in stock. As for the rest, my 4-way pavilion does not have them." At the end of his words, the old man's face involuntarily revealed an apologetic expression. He gently shook his head at Xiaoyan and frowned slightly as he spoke. Facing a rank 3 alchemist, the old man's heart was incomparably nervous. After all, this kind of person was someone that even a Dodi had to greet with a smiling face. If he did not receive him well, forget about how this black-robed young man in front of him would treat him. Once this matter was known by the upper echelons of the clan, it was likely that he would also be banished from the clan. Thinking until this point, the old man's expression appeared to become even more respectful. Even his breathing had become careful. Seeing the old man reveal such an appearance, Xiaoyan's expression was unconcerned. However, in his heart he immediately felt a wild joy at this moment. Xiaoyan originally thought that even if he could find the things that he wanted in this 4-way pavilion, there would at most be 1 or 2 of them. After all, it was just as the old man in front of him had said. The things that Xiaoyan needed could be called priceless treasures. It was impossible for an ordinary faction to possess them. Even if they did, there would only be one of them. Moreover, it would be the kind that would be completely hidden away. It was impossible for outsiders to know about it, much less take it out and openly sell it. However, the answer that the old man gave Xiaoyan caused Xiaoyan's heart to be filled with joy and incomparable surprise. However, from this, Xiaoyan could also see that this so-called four-way pavilion was likely not some ordinary faction. Otherwise, how could they possess the 3 medicinal ingredients on Xiaoyan's list at the same time? The medicinal ingredients? Xiaoyan's hands were behind his back. His eyes narrowed as he stared at the old man in front of him. As he spoke, his hands, which were behind his back and covered by his sleeves, slowly clenched together. The emotions in his heart gradually became nervous. Seeing that Xiaoyan had spoken again, the old man hurriedly piled up a smile on his old face. He hurriedly said, "Sir, the medicinal ingredients that you want are currently in our 4-way pavilion. I'll order someone to bring them over." At the same time the old man's words sounded, he swiftly called an attendant forward. Under Xiaoyan's gaze, the old man's face carried a solemn expression as he spoke a few words to the attendant by the side. After ordering him to go and return quickly, he turned his eyes to Xiaoyan with a face full of smiles. He cupped his hands together and said with a smile, "It will take some time for the medicinal ingredients to be brought over. During this period of time, Sir can still take a look around. Other than the medicinal ingredients on your list, our pavilion also has other high-tier medicinal ingredients. If Sir takes a fancy to them, feel free to pick them." When he said this, the old man's face could not help but reveal a confident expression. Very obviously, he also had quite a lot of confidence in the items in his 4-way pavilion, even if the black-robed young man in front of him was a rank 3 alchemist. Hearing this, Xiaoyan's eyes flickered slightly. His heart could not help but be moved slightly. Early on, when Xiaoyan had just reached the 2nd floor, he had already smelled an extremely rich medicinal fragrance from the air. To Xiaoyan this smell was extremely familiar. Other than some top-grade medicinal ingredients, there was nothing else that could emit such a rich medicinal fragrance. Xiaoyan's gaze moved quickly across the various counters in the hall. In just a moment, Xiaoyan's pitch-black eyes were filled with a fiery glow. Attached dragon branch, strange flower fruit, soul-nurturing grass. TSK. If these items were placed in the outside world, they would be able to cause a huge commotion. I did not expect that they would be placed so casually here. Seeing those rare medicinal ingredients that even he had only heard of, Xiaoyan could not help but feel shocked by the background of this 4-way pavilion. Just what kind of faction was this in order to be able to randomly place these things, which could normally be called priceless treasures, in this place for others to sell? This kind of thing caused even Xiaoyan to feel a deep shock in his heart. Seeing these medicinal ingredients placed so casually on the counter, Xiaoyan could not help but want to buy them all in one go. However, after struggling in his heart for a while, Xiaoyan finally calmed down. However, at the same time Xiaoyan walked out of the 4-way pavilion in a state of shock. Only when the old man had already left the 4-way pavilion and appeared on the street outside did Xiaoyan, who was looking at the medicinal ingredients at the counter, slowly straightened his body. His eyes were filled with suspicion as he slowly swept his gaze across the place. Immediately Xiaoyan took a deep breath and narrowed his eyes. Earlier Xiaoyan had clearly sensed an extremely obscure qi covering his body. That qi was clearly trying to probe something from Xiaoyan's body. However, at this moment, that qi had suddenly disappeared. This involuntarily caused Xiaoyan to feel some doubt in his heart. Chapter 575. That aura, exactly who is it? Xiaoyan narrowed both of his eyes. His gaze slowly swept over everyone present, only to discover that out of the 3 9-star bandits present, including the old man from earlier, there were only 2 left. I hope that I am overthinking things. His pupils tightened slightly. Xiaoyan felt an indescribable bad premonition in his heart. Earlier, as he did not pay too much attention to the situation here, he did not discover that the other 9-star half-martial emperor had already left the 4 Directions pavilion without him noticing. At this moment, Xiaoyan could only hope in his heart that the other 9-star half-martial emperor did not discover anything. Otherwise, his departure would very likely bring about an enormous danger to Xiaoyan. It seems that I cannot stay in this place for long, Xiaoyan secretly said in his heart. Soon after, he no longer bothered to pay attention to the old man. No matter what, he must first obtain these 3 medicinal ingredients. As for the other medicinal ingredients, regardless of how big or small they were all placed at the back of Xiaoyan's mind. After a short period of time, the attendant who had been ordered by the old man to retrieve the medicinal ingredients returned with a white jade tray in his hands and arrived in front of the old man. A high-grade storage ring was placed on the jade tray. Without much thought, the medicinal ingredients that Xiaoyan wanted were definitely within the storage ring. After receiving the jade tray, the old man casually asked the attendant to leave. As for himself, he carefully inspected the items within the storage ring. Only then did he gently exhale with a face full of smiles. Soon after, he raised the tray in his hands and walked over to Xiaoyan. "Haha, milord, the 3 medicinal ingredients that you need are within this storage ring. Milord, please take a look." Walking forward, the old man looked at Xiaoyan with a smile and handed the tray with the storage ring in front of Xiaoyan as he spoke respectfully. Seeing this, Xiaoyan's eyes flickered slightly. Soon after, he nodded his head and picked up the storage ring on the tray. At the same time, a strand of spiritual strength flew out from between his brows and entered the storage ring. Sure enough, there were 3 exquisite jade boxes placed in order within the storage ring. The jade box was tightly shut and did not open at all. However, the entire jade box was completely transparent. Through the crystal-like outer layer of the jade box, Xiaoyan could clearly see that the 3 medicinal ingredients were carefully placed within the jade box. Seeing these 3 medicinal ingredients, joy immediately surged into Xiaoyan's heart. These 3 medicinal ingredients were exactly what he needed. Dragon Vine Blood Branch, Snow Spirit Fruit, Young Fire Fruit. It was fine that the first 2 medicinal ingredients had changed. However, when Xiaoyan saw that the 3rd medicinal ingredient was actually the Tender Flame Fruit, the emotion in his heart was finally unable to be suppressed at this moment. Unexpectedly, this was really unexpected. He was actually able to find the Tender Flame Fruit in this place. One must know that this was the most important medicinal ingredient to refine the Bodhi returning pill. Even Leng Bingshuang valued it greatly. He had never imagined that Xiaoyan would actually find this item here. The Tender Flame Fruit. It is truly a case of traveling far and wide in search of something, only to find it without any effort. Originally, I thought that I would need to search for a few more days before I could find you. However, since this is the case, it seems that I have finally gathered all the medicinal ingredients I need to refine the Bodhi returning pill. This enormous surprise caused Xiaoyan's heart to be extremely excited at this moment. Obtaining the Tender Flame Fruit also meant that Xiaoyan was one step closer to obtaining the Icy Spirit Cold Liquid. Currently, Xiaoyan only needed to wait until his alchemist class reached rank 3 before he could begin to refine the Bodhisattva returning pill. At that time, the Icy Spirit pill would naturally not be a problem. After a long while, Xiaoyan's mind, which was immersed in the storage ring, finally slowly withdrew. At this moment, the old man beside him was still looking at Xiaoyan with a surprised expression on his face. There was some cold sweat on his forehead, as if he was afraid that Xiaoyan was not satisfied with these medicinal ingredients. That's right. I want all 3 of these medicinal ingredients. When he heard this, the old man's face immediately revealed a joyous expression. Although he was aware of the value of these medicinal ingredients, he was even more aware of the importance of a rank 3 alchemist. Today, if he was able to obtain the favor of a rank 3 alchemist for the clan, then to their entire clan, there would be endless benefits. At the same time, his position within the clan would certainly rise as a result. To him, this transaction was not the slightest bit of loss. Of course, the precondition for this was that the black-robed young man in front of him was really a rank 3 alchemist. If he were to know that the Xiaoyan in front of him was actually only a rank 2 alchemist, just what kind of thoughts would this old man have in his heart? Tell me, how much are these 3 medicinal ingredients worth? I will buy all of them. It was a long while later before Xiaoyan once again opened his mouth. His expression was calm and there was not the slightest ripple. If this was in the past, Xiaoyan would really not have the confidence to say such words. After all, there was not much of the D-tier medicinal pills that he had refined. However, the reason why the current Xiaoyan had the confidence to say these words was all thanks to the storage ring that he had obtained from Zhao Xian. As an elite Do-D, the foundation in Zhao Xian's hands was naturally extraordinary. Just the D-tier medicinal pills alone, there were over 10 of them in his storage ring. There were even over a dozen rank 3 medicinal pills. As for the other various medicinal ingredients, there was an even greater amount. Therefore, after receiving all the wealth of this elite Do-D, it was not a problem for Xiaoyan to obtain these 3 medicinal ingredients with his current financial strength. Hearing the satisfaction that was emitted from Xiaoyan's words, the old man's heart was incomparably happy. However, soon after, the old man hurriedly waved his hand at Xiaoyan and hurriedly said with a smile, "You are too polite. It is only 3 medicinal ingredients. In any case, placing them in our 4 pavilions will only end up burying them. Rather than wasting them like this, why don't I make the decision and gift these 3 medicinal ingredients to you? It is just that." Cuckoo, you want me to owe you a favor? Seeing the embarrassed smile on the old man's face, Xiaoyan's eyes flashed slightly. He immediately changed his tone and laughed. Sir, I do not have any other intentions. I only hope that, sure, it is just a favor. I already owe a lot. I do not lack this little bit. Soon after, Xiaoyan smiled and nodded without waiting for the old man's words to sound. He wore the storage ring on his hand and laughed in a seemingly magnanimous manner. Ah! Xiaoyan's decisive words also caused the old man's expression to be stunned. He did not expect that the black-robed young man in front of him would actually so easily agree to this favor. Alchemists, they are really a group of people who do not play by the rules, the old man quietly muttered in his heart. However, at this moment he was even more happy in his heart. With these words from Xiaoyan, it was likely that his position in the clan would swiftly rise in the future. At that time, why would he need to continue staying in this 4 pavilions to look at other people's faces? However, as if he wanted to completely capture Xiaoyan, the old man's eyes flickered slightly. At the same time, he seemed to have recalled something and hurriedly inhaled a breath of cold air from his mouth. This caused Xiaoyan's expression to be slightly startled. Soon after, the old man hurriedly opened his mouth again to Xiaoyan and said in a serious voice, "Sir, I have a piece of information here that might be able to help you obtain the remaining few items on this list. However, I wonder if you are willing to listen?" After the old man's voice sounded, the expression in Xiaoyan's eyes immediately focused. He did not expect that this old man would bring him so many surprises. Chapter 576. At this moment, Xiaoyan and the old man were standing in a spacious and empty room. Xiaoyan unceremoniously sat on the seat that had been prepared. The old man, on the other hand, stood a short distance in front of Xiaoyan in a respectful manner. "Tell me, what is the news?" Xiaoyan narrowed his eyes and stared at the old man in front of him. There seemed to be an invisible pressure gradually pressing on the old man's heart, causing his heart to suddenly tighten. Looking at Xiaoyan's appearance, it seemed as though he would attack at any moment. Cough, cough. The old man's old face was slightly pale as he coughed twice. After pausing for a moment, he carefully opened his mouth and asked Xiaoyan, "May I ask, sir, is there a problem with your spiritual strength?" Xiaoyan frowned. He did not know that the old man would actually ask such a question. His heart immediately tightened. Immediately, the old man seemed to be afraid that Xiaoyan would misunderstand and hurriedly opened his mouth and said, "Sir, please don't misunderstand. I only saw that the soul baby fruit was written on the list. Therefore I was curious and asked such a question." After hearing these words, the emotions in Xiaoyan's heart slowly calmed down. At the same time, a chill surfaced in his eyes as he looked at the old man in front of him. This caused the old man's body to involuntarily tremble. In his heart he was even more fearful of Xiaoyan. "Recently, my spiritual strength is in need of a breakthrough. Therefore I conveniently search for it. Why, are you very curious about my condition?" With a cold gaze, Xiaoyan's tone was slightly sinister as he said. "Ah." The old man's body trembled and a chill swiftly rose from the bottom of his feet. After which, he hurriedly bowed respectfully towards Xiaoyan and coughed twice before speaking with an embarrassed face. "Cough, cough, sir, you must be joking. Just now, I was merely curious only." As the old man spoke, his voice unconsciously trembled. At the same time, cold sweat swiftly flowed down from the wrinkles on his forehead. "What about now?" Xiaoyan's tone was cold and indifferent, but in his heart, he let out a sigh of relief. "I'm not curious anymore. I'm not curious anymore." The old man hurriedly lowered his head and spoke in a low voice. Xiaoyan sneered, but the old man in front of him had his head buried deep, so he didn't know about it at all. "Go ahead and tell me. I don't believe that you would ask those questions for no reason." Xiaoyan withdrew his tone. Only then did the old man in front of him heave a sigh of relief in his heart. At the same time, he recalled that he did indeed have something to say earlier. However, due to Xiaoyan's pressure, he had momentarily become at a loss and forgot to say it. "Sir, although our 4-way pavilion does not have the soul baby fruit, I know that there is a place where this kind of natural treasure that possesses spiritual strength exists." Ah! Xiaoyan's expression suddenly turned serious, and joy involuntarily rose in his heart. If it was really as the old man in front of him had said, then perhaps there was hope for his spiritual strength to break through to rank 3. When he saw the change in Xiaoyan's expression, joy also rose in the old man's heart. Although the alchemist's temperament was strange and fickle, if he could cater to the alchemist's preferences, he might be able to bind the black-robed young man in front of him to him. He would not easily miss such a good opportunity. "Where is the thing that you want to talk about?" After regaining his senses, Xiaoyan did not ignore the old man's words because of his excitement. The old man involuntarily clicked his tongue in wonder in his heart when he saw that Xiaoyan had actually recovered his calmness so quickly. This kind of mental state was really difficult to imagine that it would actually appear in the body of a member of the younger generation. After all, it was likely that even some of the experts from the older generation would not be able to calm their hearts so quickly after hearing such news. After a slight pause, the old man organized the following words in his heart. He really did not want to be angrily glared at by Xiaoyan in front of him again. After a short few breaths, the old man finally lifted his head. His gaze slowly looked towards Xiaoyan, and his tone carefully asked, "May I know if sir has heard about the matter of the desolate ancient ruins?" "Huh." When he heard this, Xiaoyan was stunned, and his face involuntarily revealed a puzzled expression. He had really never heard of what the old man in front of him had said. When he saw the expression on Xiaoyan's face, the old man's heart finally relaxed a little, and his mouth softly exhaled a breath of relief. Soon after, his tone was somewhat uncertain as he said, "Sir, recently there have been rumors that at the border of the Shilin mountain range as well as a place that borders the human world, there seems to have been an ancient ruin discovered. The natural treasure that you need, which possesses spiritual strength, is located there. You say that I need it, but I still do not know what exactly it is." Xiaoyan's eyes flashed slightly, but his tone was extremely flat. When he heard Xiaoyan's words, the old man could not help but smile awkwardly. Originally, he wanted to keep Xiaoyan in suspense, but looking at the situation, the Xiaoyan in front of him was already a little impatient. Helplessly, the old man could only smile embarrassedly. Soon after, he frowned slightly and pretended to be deep in thought. After confirming that his memory was correct, he opened his mouth to Xiaoyan and said, "Sir, the thing that I am talking about is the soul-consolidating fruit." "Yes." When the old man's voice fell, Xiaoyan's heart suddenly shook, and an incomparably excited expression immediately surged into the depths of his eyes. Even his body, which was originally sitting on the chair, could not help but suddenly stand up at this moment. Just this point alone was enough to prove the waves in Xiaoyan's heart at this moment. Soul-consolidating fruit. Soul-consolidating fruit, I really did not expect it. I did not even dare to think about this thing, but I did not expect that you would actually take the initiative to deliver it to me. The voice in his mouth softly muttered. Xiaoyan also felt a little surprised in his heart because of this. When Xiaoyan first wrote this list, Xiaoyan had already thought of the soul-consolidating fruit. This kind of fruit could be said to be extremely suitable for the current Xiaoyan. If he had it, Xiaoyan had absolute confidence that he would be able to break through his spiritual strength to the level of a rank 3 alchemist. However, it was also because of the soul-consolidating fruit's extraordinary effects that it was rare and not easy to find. Therefore, Xiaoyan placed his target on the relatively more likely soul-infant fruit. However, he did not expect that what made Xiaoyan surprised was that there was still no news of the soul-infant fruit, but there was actually already news of the soul-consolidating fruit. The soul-consolidating fruit. This kind of fruit was neither a flower nor a fruit. However, it possessed an extremely large and pure spiritual strength. This kind of large spiritual strength was enough to allow an ordinary rank 2 alchemist to swiftly raise his spiritual strength to the level of a rank 3 alchemist in the shortest amount of time. Most importantly, the large spiritual strength that the soul-consolidating fruit possessed could allow anyone to directly swallow and refine it without any side effects. It was also because of this that this soul-consolidating fruit had become an object that all alchemists and formation masters yearned for in their hearts. After all, if one relied purely on training to raise one's spiritual strength, one would need an unknown amount of time. However, a small fruit was currently able to create a rank 3 alchemist or a rank 3 formation master within a short period of time. It was likely that any alchemist below rank 3 would not bear to miss out on this kind of huge temptation. Even Xiaoyan was no exception to this point. Chapter 577. In the other hall, when the old man saw that Xiaoyan had such a big reaction, he was not surprised but happy. Indeed, this was what he wanted to see the most at this moment. From his point of view, the greater the commotion in Xiaoyan's heart, the better it would be. This would only improve their relationship. The greater the favor Xiaoyan in front of him owed him, the more he would be able to help him in the future. He would also have an even greater reason to get this rank 3 alchemist to act on his behalf. For him, this was really killing many birds with one stone. He just didn't expect that the black-robed young man in front of him didn't know anything about this desolate ancient ruins. However, this news was only spread in recent months. Perhaps during this period, Xiaoyan was in an inconspicuous city, bitterly searching for the medicinal herbs he needed. Of course, all of this was not important to the old man. What he really cared about was whether Xiaoyan in front of him could bring him great benefits. Are you sure? Are you sure that thing is really the condensing soul fruit? Suddenly Xiaoyan, who stood up in front of him, stared at the old man. There was a different meaning in his tone. It was both excited and suspicious. Noticing Xiaoyan's dark black, deep eyes shooting over, the old man's body involuntarily shuddered. It must be said that the black-robed young man in front of him may appear ordinary, but the invisible pressure that he gave him was not the slightest bit inferior to those in charge within the clan. Thinking of this, the old man couldn't help but secretly feel scared. He could only think that maybe he was thinking too much. After recovering, the old man's face quickly surged with a respectful smile. He smiled respectfully at Xiaoyan and said, "Sir, you can rest assured about this. I am willing to use my life to guarantee that my news is definitely not wrong." When the old man's words fell, he did not forget to secretly add a sentence in his heart. "This news has now spread crazily in the few big cities around. I'm afraid that you are the only one who doesn't know." Of course, Xiaoyan naturally didn't know about these words. However, even if he knew, he believed that he wouldn't take it to heart. As long as a ruin appeared, it would be strange if it didn't attract attention from all directions. Therefore, Xiaoyan didn't have too many doubts about the words of the old man in front of him. After thinking for a while, he nodded his head non-committally. And when Xiaoyan obtained part of the news about the ruins at the same time on the other side, outside the most magnificent courtyard in Coldstream City, the white-robed old man who had left the Four Directions pavilion earlier had already appeared here. Standing outside the manor, the old man slowly lifted his gaze. His pair of densely white eyes looked at the signboard in front of him. The two large words were flickering with a bright golden light. The expression in the old man's eyes flickered slightly. The corners of his mouth unconsciously parted into a cold smile. Sun Mansion. When the guard in front of the door saw the person who came, a respectful smile quickly appeared on his originally indifferent face. He hurriedly bowed respectfully to the old man, and at the same time, he also respectfully called out, "Sir, sir. Greetings, old Bai." Hearing this, the cold smile on the old man's face slowly disappeared. In the end it became indifference. After which, he softly snorted and said in a deep voice, "Humph, I have an important matter to discuss with your family head. Quickly bring me to see him." Hearing the words from the old man's mouth, the two guards did not dare to slight him in the slightest. They hurriedly bowed respectfully to the old man again. After which, they made an inviting gesture to the old man. At the same time, they hurriedly opened the tightly shut door behind them. Humph. After a cold snort, the old man no longer acted courteously. Without waiting for the guard to lead the way, his body flashed and he instantly entered the courtyard. Seeing the white-robed old man who had disappeared without a trace in the blink of an eye, the expressions on the faces of the two guards in front of the door instantly became overwhelmed with shock. What frightening speed! As expected of a 9-star half-martial emperor expert. That's right. However, if he is compared to the family head, he is far inferior. The family head is a dignified elite Do-D. Regardless of how fast Bai Yi is, how can a 9-star half-martial emperor be faster than a Do-D? However, if we were to compare the both of us, even though we are all half-martial emperors, we pale in comparison to Bai Yi. The two armored guards in front of the courtyard mocked each other. At the same time, the white-robed old man who was called Bai Yi had also used a swift speed to fly past a cluster of buildings within a short moment. After which, he arrived in front of the most majestic building within the courtyard. The main hall of the Sun Manor. Ha, brother Bai Yi, why have you returned after leaving just now? Don't tell me that you have forgotten to inform me of something? You can be rest assured that with me around, as long as that brat called Xiaoyan dares to appear in my Coldstream City, I will immediately dispatch people to capture him. High in the sky, before Bai Ye's body could land, a deep voice that appeared to be quite imposing was emitted from the main hall below like a rumbling thunder. The person who spoke appeared to have sensed Bai Ye's arrival. It was as though he had been waiting here for a long time. Bai Ye's heart involuntarily became awed when he heard that thunder-like voice. An elite Do-D was really this frightening. Just the aura and pressure contained within those words caused Bai Ye's heart to tremble. It was difficult to imagine just what kind of apocalyptic scene it would be if they were to fight. However, Bai Ye's emotions swiftly recovered their calmness soon after. At the same time, his body, which was standing in the sky, flashed slightly and swiftly landed in front of the main hall below. Bai Ye's gaze shifted downwards. In front of the main hall, there was a middle-aged man with a strong body wearing embroidered clothes. He was smiling as he waited with his hands behind his back. Brother Bai Yi left in the morning and hurried back to my Sun Manor in the afternoon. Looks like Brother Bai Yi has deep feelings for my Sun clan. The middle-aged large man looked at Bai Yi with a smile that was not a smile. The expression in his eyes appeared quite sharp. Bai Yi involuntarily frowned when he saw this. He did not expect that all of his movements were being monitored by this person in front of him. Clan head Sun is also concerned about me. However, the reason I have returned this time around is not for any other reason. Instead, there is something that I feel that there is a need to inform you of. Bai Yi frowned deeply as he stared at the middle-aged man in front of him. It was a long while later before he slowly spoke in a solemn tone. The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes when he heard this. His gaze stared intently at Bai Yi in front of him. It was as though he was examining the credibility of the latter's words. After a couple of breaths, the middle-aged man finally laughed softly and opened his mouth to speak. Haha, Brother Bai Yi, please don't misunderstand. You should also know that as a Do-Di, I am able to sense anyone whose aura I know as long as they are in my Coldstream City. Therefore this is really an unintentional act. But Brother Bai Yi, you said that you have sensed something this time around. May I know? Although the middle-aged man appeared to have a straightforward character, his words were tactful and detailed, causing one to not dare to be careless. The reason I have come this time around is to tell Clan Head Sun that I have seen a person in your four-way pavilion. The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows slightly when he heard this. He had seen many people. Who was this person? Brother Bai Yi, please speak frankly. I do not like to waste my brain. Cuckoo, since Clan Head Sun is not willing to think too much, I will speak frankly. This person is the person you mentioned earlier. Suddenly the expression of the middle-aged man solidified. He involuntarily let out a soft exclamation with Bai Yi in front of him. Xiaoyan. Chapter 578. Xiaoyan. It was a long while later before the middle-aged man gradually woke up from the thoughts in his heart. However, he still could not resist softly muttering Xiaoyan's name. You mean that Xiaoyan is currently in my Coldstream City? The middle-aged man narrowed his eyes. His eyes were sharp as he stared at Bai Yi in front of him. His voice was somewhat low and deep as he spoke. Cuckoo, that's right. Chief Sun, not only is Xiaoyan currently in Coldstream City, but he is also in the Four Directions Pavilion established by the Sun Clan. Bai Yi parted his mouth and smiled when he heard this. He revealed a row of densely white teeth. Under the illumination of the sunlight, the smile on Bai Yi's face, which should have appeared warm, appeared dark and cold at this moment. A joy immediately surfaced on the middle-aged man's face when he heard the words from Bai Yi's mouth. It was unexpected that Xiaoyan would actually take the initiative to deliver himself to their doorstep. As long as they were able to capture Xiaoyan and deliver him to the Heavenly Sword Sect, it would be quite beneficial to their Sun clan. The four large clans under the Heavenly Sword Sect, Hua, Zhua, Bai, and Sun, each managed the four regions within the territory of the Heavenly Sword Sect. The distribution of the regions was based on the contributions of the four large clans. For the past 100 years, their Sun clan had always been at the bottom. Even now, the region that they were allocated was the smallest. However, if they were able to capture Xiaoyan and deliver him to the Heavenly Sword Sect, the positions of the four large clans would undergo a great reshuffling. The size of the region was directly related to the profits that their entire clan could obtain. This was also related to the overall strength of their entire clan. This was something that they could not afford to not pay attention to. Moreover, Xiaoyan had disappeared for 3 years. Now that he had reappeared, the bounty that the four large sects had announced for him was something that even these elite Do-Di were extremely tempted in their hearts. If they were able to obtain that bounty, in addition to their Sun clan capturing Xiaoyan, they would be able to perform a great service for the Heavenly Sword Sect. At that time, the Sun clan would be able to obtain far more than this. When he thought of this, the middle-aged man's heart immediately moved slightly. Once Xiaoyan was captured by his Sun clan, the leader of the four great clans under the Heavenly Sword Sect would change hands. Bai Yi, who was in front of him, laughed coldly in his heart when he saw this. If the head of the Sun clan could think of this, how could he not? Long before he had arrived at the Sun clan, he had already used a secret technique to inform the Bai clan behind him. Unfortunately, the territories of the Sun and Bai clans were adjacent to each other. As their neighbor, the Bai clan would likely arrive here soon. This was the reason why Bai Yi had intentionally delayed for so long. Although the two clans were separated by territories, the distance between them was still quite great. However, Bai Yi was confident that the head of the Bai clan would definitely personally come once Xiaoyan appeared. With his strength as a Do-Di, this little distance would not take much time. Bai Yi involuntarily laughed coldly in his heart when he thought of this. As long as the head of the Sun clan arrived, it would be hard to say just which clan would end up with Xiaoyan. However, Bai Ye's gaze immediately turned. His eyes flickered in a manner that was undetectable. After which, he looked at the middle-aged man in front of him and opened his mouth once again. His tone carried some ridicule as he laughed. However, I think that at this very moment, the manager of the Four Directions Pavilion, Sun Hua, should be surrounding Xiaoyan with a heart filled with joy. Haha. The middle-aged man immediately knit his brows tightly when he heard this. The expression on his face swiftly became gloomy. What do you mean by this? The middle-aged man slowly clenched his hands behind his back. Both of his eyes narrowed as he stared at Bai Yi and asked in a low voice. At the same time that he spoke, circular invisible ripples slowly spread out from the empty space around the middle-aged man. Seeing this, Bai Ye's heart could not help but feel terrified. Soon after, he once again opened his mouth with a smile and said, "Cuckoo, head of the Sun Clan, this matter is not made up by me. However, that Xiaoyan seems to have already become a rank 3 alchemist." Huh? Rank 3 alchemist? The expression of the middle-aged man in front of Bai Yi instantly changed when the words from his mouth sounded. A deep shock involuntarily surged within his pair of sharp eyes. Even though this head of the Sun Clan had some understanding of Xiaoyan, he only knew that Xiaoyan had once survived under the joint attack of the leaders of the 4 large sections. He also knew that Xiaoyan possessed the frightening ability to challenge those of a higher class. However, he did not know that Xiaoyan was actually an alchemist. Moreover, he was actually a rank 3 alchemist. Rank 3 alchemist Xiaoyan. How is this possible? The muscles on the middle-aged man's face involuntarily twitched intensely. His eyes were filled with disbelief. Indeed, with the status of a member of the younger generation, Xiaoyan was actually able to train his dou qi and spiritual strength to such an extent at such a young age. This kind of matter was indeed hard to imagine. Of course, what they did not know was that even though the current Xiaoyan's spiritual strength was not weak, there was still quite a large distance between him and the level of a rank 3 alchemist. At the end of the day, the current Xiaoyan was only a rank 2 alchemist. The reason why they would think that Xiaoyan was a rank 3 alchemist was because the medicinal ingredients that Xiaoyan needed were basically medicinal ingredients for refining rank 3 medicinal pills and above. That was all. Cuckoo, the head of the Sun Clan, should also be able to understand the importance of a rank 3 alchemist. From the way I see it, Elder Sun Hua of your clan is doing this for the good of your clan. After all, if you are able to recruit a rank 3 alchemist, I believe that your clan will be able to easily take the position of the head of the 4 large clans with the influence of a rank 3 alchemist in less than a year. The future of the Sun Clan can be said to be very bright. Hearing these words, the expression in the middle-aged man's eyes immediately brightened. As an elite dou di, he naturally understood the importance of a rank 3 alchemist in his heart. If his Sun Clan was able to obtain the help of a rank 3 alchemist, the future of the Sun Clan would really be bright. However, the middle-aged man immediately frowned. He did not believe that a member of the Bai clan who had fought alongside his Sun Clan for so many years would say such words. As expected, Bai Yi first displayed a respectful manner. After cupping his hands together toward the middle-aged man, he turned his eyebrows and pretended to frown and shake his head in a pitiful manner. With a click of his tongue, he sighed softly. Unfortunately, this rank 3 alchemist just had to be Xiaoyan. He is someone that the 4 large sects want to capture. If the head of the Sun Clan really dares to recruit him, stop acting pretentious in front of this clan head. A mere 9-star half-emperor like you does not have the qualification to make irresponsible remarks in front of this clan head. Before the words from Bai Ye's mouth sounded, the head of the Sun Clan suddenly let out a cold snort and interrupted him. It was also at this moment that a turbulent aura was suddenly transmitted over from the horizon outside of Coldstream City. The strength of that aura was not inferior even when compared to the head of the Sun Clan. The expression of the middle-aged man within the Sun Mansion in the city instantly changed when this aura attacked. He turned his eyes and his sharp eyes immediately landed on Bai Yi in front of him. Both of his eyes suddenly surged with a raging fury. Bai Ye's eyes were filled with a fiery fury. Bai Ye's expression changed. Bai Yi, you are purposely stalling for time. This person was the head of the Bai clan. Chapter 579. Within the Sun Mansion, the clan head of the Sun Clan revealed a fierce glint as he stared at Bai Yi in front of him. His pair of sharp eyes revealed a raging killing intent at this moment. Bai Yi, you actually dare to tease this venerable self and purposely stall for time. At this moment, the raging killing intent on the face of the clan head of the Sun Clan was obvious. The words in his mouth had become a little hoarse because of the anger in his chest. Cuckoo, clan head of the Sun Clan, Both of us are doing this for the sake of our clans. If your Sun clan wants Xiaoyan, how can my Bai clan not interfere? I, Bai Yi, am not the kind of person who will betray my clan. Bai Yi ridiculed when he heard this. The words that were spat out from his mouth caused the expression of the clan head of the Sun clan to become even more gloomy. If you were honest, this venerable self would still be courteous to you. However, since you insist on seeking death, this venerable self shall fulfill your wish today. Seeing Bai Ye's treacherous manner, the expression of the clan head of the Sun clan involuntarily turned green. Soon after, however, it transformed into an even more turbulent killing intent. At the same time that the furious cry from the clan head of the Sun clan sounded, his strong body suddenly shook. The turbulent aura within his body also suddenly swept out at this moment. It transformed into an invisible wave that carried an aura that came from all directions as it violently swept toward Bai Yi. With such a close distance and the difference in strength between the two, Bai Yi had no way of dodging. In the blink of an eye, that frightening aura had already arrived in front of Bai Yi with a momentum that could break bamboo. Soon after, it was about to violently smash onto Bai Ye's body. At this moment, Bai Ye's heart was also extremely terrified. He did not have the chance to retaliate when faced with an attack from a Do Di. Currently, he did not even have the chance to dodge. He could only watch this invisible aura violently smash onto his body. In the next instant, a deep and loud laughter was suddenly emitted from the sky above Coldstream City. At the same time, a terrifying aura that was not the slightest bit inferior to the former suddenly descended and instantly blocked the aura that was emitted by the head of the Sun clan. Haha, Sun Shua, you want to kill someone from my Bai family right in front of me? You are truly tyrannical. As the aura of the head of the Sun clan, Sun Shua, was blocked, a middle-aged man in a long white robe slowly descended from the sky and blocked in front of Bai Yi. Seeing his master, Bai Ye's face immediately surged with surprise. He hurriedly bowed to the middle-aged man in front of him and said respectfully, "Thank you for saving my life, Patriarch." Facing this, the middle-aged man in front of him still had his back to Bai Yi. He only raised a hand and casually waved it. Then he raised his gaze and looked at the head of the Sun family, Sun Shua, with a faint smile. "Haha, Sun Shua, you and I have both guarded our respective clans for many years. It has been a long time since we last met. Now that we have met, you have become much stronger than before." The head of the Bai clan looked at Sun Shua with a smile on his face. His eyes narrowed slightly as a bright light shot out from the depths of his pupils. Baiying, you are not weaker than me. Your strength has actually reached the middle stage of a 3-star Do Di. Sun Shua coldly snorted. His tone did not appear to be at a disadvantage. "Haha, same to you. Since you are able to train to this level, wouldn't I become a joke if I couldn't?" Baiying laughed out loud. His laughter was deliberately wrapped by Do Chi, allowing everyone in Coldstream City to clearly hear it. At the same time, the belittling intent within his words was also clearly transmitted into the ears of everyone in Coldstream City. I can't be bothered to waste my breath with you. I'm afraid that you do not have any good intentions in coming here this time around. Sun Shua's eyes stared at Bai Ying in front of him. His tone was filled with ruthlessness. He was also extremely afraid of the latter. This fellow in front of him was the same as the clan heads of the other two clans. They had all competed with him for many years. Now that they had met, it was unexpected that they were evenly matched. It was just that he did not know just how strong the clan heads of the Zhua clan and the Hua clan were. After all, the Zhua clan was the leader amongst the 4 great clans, followed by the Hua clan. Currently, the Bai clan and the Sun clan were basically equal in strength. He did not know just how developed those two clans had become. "Hey, what do you mean by I do not have any good intentions? I heard that Xiaoyan has arrived at Coldstream City. I am afraid that clan head Sun will not be able to capture him. Therefore I have specially come to help. After all, if that Xiaoyan manages to escape in your Sun clan's territory, it will not only cause your Sun clan to lose face. If the Heavenly Sword sect were to blame you, this sin is something that you will not be able to bear." Bai Ying's face seemed to smile as he stared at Sun Shua and laughed. Bai Ying, are you sincerely looking down on my Sun clan?" A fury involuntarily rose in Sun Shua's heart when he heard Bai Ying's words. His face was green and the muscles on his face were slightly distorted. "Haha, brother Sun, why do you say this? I'm only worried about you. After all, the Sun clan is one of our 4 great clans. If you lose face, the other 3 clans will also lose face. Stop uttering nonsense. Since you have come with a motive, why do you need to pretend to be benevolent? That's right, Xiaoyan is currently in my Coldstream City. However, capturing him is a matter of my Sun clan. Bai Ying, you better mind your own business. Sun Shua's face was filled with anger as he stared at Bai Ying. His pair of sharp eyes appeared as though they were about to spit fire. The pair of fists under his sleeves were tightly clenched together. The dou qi within his body churned and the space around Sun Shua's body began to fluctuate intensely. Aha, brother Sun Shua, those who have come are guests. Why do you need to be angry? Moreover, this is the territory of your Sun clan. If you and I were to fight, my Bai clan would be fine. However, if the fight were to affect your Sun clan, the losses would outweigh the gains. As for the matter of capturing Xiaoyan, why don't both our clans rely on our own abilities? Bai Ying smiled faintly as he looked at Sun Shua. The expression on his face appeared unusually easygoing. Compared to Sun Shua, Bai Ying was like an easygoing middle-aged uncle, causing one to instinctively feel a sense of closeness. Rely on our own abilities? Based on what abilities? Hearing Bai Ying's words, Sun Shua frowned gloomily. After pondering for a moment in his heart, he finally raised his head and stared at Bai Ying with a fierce face as he asked in a low voice. Aha, this is simple. Everyone says that Xiaoyan possesses the ability to challenge those of a higher class. Since both of us are elite dou di, it is inconvenient for us to fight. In that case, we should just let those below the dou di level take action. Whichever side first restrains Xiaoyan will be the side that Xiaoyan will belong to. Bai Ying parted his mouth and smiled when he saw that Sun Shua had taken the bait. An obscure glint involuntarily flashed deep within his eyes. When the words from his mouth sounded, Bai Ying's gaze also looked at Bai Yi behind him. Hearing Bai Ying's words, the expression on Sun Shua's face involuntarily became a little startled. It was unexpected that Bai Ying would actually raise such a request. However, the most important thing was that he did not limit the number of people. In this way, was he not openly pushing Xiaoyan into the arms of his Sun clan? After thinking for a moment, a smile involuntarily appeared on Sun Shua's face. It was as though Xiaoyan had already become a turtle in his jar. All he needed to do was to send someone out and easily retrieve him. Not long after, his Sun clan would become the leader of the 4 great clans under the Heavenly Sword sect. Haha, Bai Ying, since you are willing to give him away, this clan head shall not be polite and accept it. Aha, alright. I will agree to your request. Both our clans will send people. Whichever side is the first to restrain Xiaoyan will belong to that side. Hearing this, Bai Ying nodded with a smile and said, That's right. Alright. We will do as brother Sun Shua says. While the 2 people in the Sun clan were laughing loudly as though they were doing business, Xiaoyan, who was in the 4 pavilions, also clearly heard all of this. Immediately, his entire face swiftly became gloomy at this moment. It was unexpected that this group of people would actually treat him as an object to fight over. They really treated him, Xiaoyan, as a soft persimmon that could be squeezed by everyone. Chapter 580. Haha, in that case, Bai Yi, I'll leave the important task of taking down Xiaoyan to you. You can't fail. Bai Ying solemnly looked at Bai Yi. His expression was extremely serious. Hearing this, Bai Yi's heart could not help but tighten. Even his expression changed slightly. He had never thought that his family's family head would agree to Sun Shua's decision. From Bai Yi's understanding of Bai Ying, his family's family head was not the kind of person who was willing to take a loss. After all, this was the Sun family's territory. If the Sun family went back on their word, the Bai family would not be able to explain themselves. At the same time, Sun Shua, who was behind Bai Ying, looked at Bai Ying, who had his back to him, and a trace of suspicion appeared on his face. Bai Ying had fought with his Sun family for many years. Sun Shua understood the latter's temperament very well. The person in front of him was not someone who was willing to suffer a loss. Once he set his eyes on a prey, even if he could not kill it, he would not be satisfied until he tore off a piece of flesh. However, Bai Ying had actually said such words in front of him. This made him feel suspicious. At the same time, Bai Yi, who was standing in front of Bai Ying, was about to speak with a hesitant expression. However, Bai Ying spoke again with a grave expression. Bai Yi, only you can take on this matter. This matter concerns the face of our Bai family. Do you want to refuse? If you refuse, this Sun guy will gain prestige. Won't he laugh at our Bai family for having no one? After Bai Ying spoke, Bai Yi lowered his head with a solemn expression. He could only helplessly nod at Bai Ying. After all, this was the family head's decision. He had no right to change it, nor did he have the right to refute it. Seeing this, Bai Ying nodded with a smile. However, Bai Yi, who had lowered his head, did not notice that at this moment, there was a flash of light in the depths of Bai Ying's eyes. But Patriarch, this is the Sun family's territory. He has the advantage of numbers. If Sun Shua sends more people, wouldn't we be at a disadvantage as well? After a moment of hesitation, Bai Yi raised his head. At the same time, the expression on Bai Ying's face quickly returned to normal. He smiled slightly and said to Bai Yi in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Young Master Bai, oh Bai Yi, while what you said is correct, do you think that since it's something that you can think of, I can't think of it?" Hearing this, Bai Yi came back to his senses. At the same time, the expression on his face quickly changed. He quickly bowed and apologized to Bai Ying, saying, "Please forgive me. This subordinate is slow-witted. I have absolutely no intention of belittling the patriarch." "Ah, it's fine. I know you're doing this for the good of the clan, so..." Before he could finish speaking, Bai Ying suddenly turned around and looked at Sun Shua. His eyes narrowed as he spoke to Sun Shua in a serious tone. He narrowed his eyes and said, "However, Patriarch's son, I think that before that, there is something that needs to be explained to you." Sun Shua raised his eyebrows. He knew what Bai Ying wanted to say, but he pretended not to know. He chuckled and asked with a look of knowing the answer. He laughed and said, "Hee, I wonder if Patriarch Bai has any questions?" Only Bai Yi and I are here in my Bai family. If I don't do anything, he will be the only one. Therefore, if your Sun family sends people, it is reasonable. You can't blame me for not having anyone in your Bai family. This is my Sun family. As long as I want to, I can send as many people as I want. If Patriarch Bai has the ability, I will not stop you." Before Bai Ying could finish speaking, Sun Shua coldly snorted and interrupted him with a sneer. "You..." Immediately, fury surged onto Bai Ying's face. His originally amiable expression suddenly became somewhat distorted and ferocious at this moment. His hands, which had extended out of his sleeves, trembled violently. His eyes were practically spitting flames of fury. Upon seeing this, Sun Shua coldly chuckled. The corners of his mouth lifted, revealing a cold smile. After which, he suddenly waved his large hand. His sleeves fluttered, emitting a fluttering sound. A formless wind also swept across the courtyard. "Everyone in my Sun family, listen up. From now on, all 9-star half-emperors are to go to the Four Directions Pavilion and capture that rank 3 alchemist, Xiaoyan. Whoever can capture him, I'll reward him with a tier 3 medicinal pill. No 2. Sun Shua's loud shout rang out. Instantly, the entire Coldstream city seemed to have been struck by lightning. Sun Shua's words exploded in the ears of everyone in the city. In the blink of an eye, the hearts of everyone in the city were deeply shaken by Sun Shua's words. From Sun Shua's words, it was clear that Xiaoyan, who was listed as the most wanted person by the 4 great sects, was actually in their Coldstream city. Furthermore, it seemed like Xiaoyan was currently in the Four Directions Pavilion in the city. Immediately, greed rose in the hearts of all the half-martial emperors in the city. They were also extremely interested in the reward offered by the 4 large sections. It was just that they were helpless in being unable to find Xiaoyan. Since he had already appeared in this place, how could everyone in the city easily miss this opportunity to capture him? In the blink of an eye, not only did the Sun family's 9-star half-emperors move, the experts from all over the city also moved upon hearing the news. At this moment, Xiaoyan was in the Four Directions Pavilion. This was something that Sun Shua had personally said. It could not be false. Within a short span of a few breaths, the enormous Coldstream city had swiftly descended into chaos because of the words that had come out of Sun Shua's mouth. Of course, it could also be said to be chaotic. However, it could also be said to be orderly. Everyone in the city had the same goal, and they were all gathering in the same direction in the city. If this scene were to be seen from high up in the sky, it could be described as grand. Countless experts surged out the Do-Chi within their bodies. Numerous Do-Chi light pillars shot straight to the 9 heavens. Immediately, everyone's bodies moved. One after another, they flickered, leaving behind numerous brilliant afterimages in the sky. Tens of thousands of people did the same thing as they swiftly gathered at the same spot in the city. If one were to look at this scene from high up in the sky, it would appear as though countless fireflies were being sucked in by something. As they crazily surged in, the light at the very center gradually became brighter and brighter. At the same time, Sun Hua, who was originally standing respectfully in front of Xiaoyan in the 4 pavilions, had shock written all over his face at this moment. When Sun Shua's words were transmitted from his mouth, the original thoughts in Sun Hua's heart were shattered like a cluster of fog. Disbelief filled his heart. No matter what, he would never have imagined that the rank 3 alchemist in front of him, who could bring him to a higher position, was actually Xiaoyan, whom the 4 great sects wanted to join hands to eliminate. You are, how is this possible? Sun Hua's face was filled with shock as he looked at Xiaoyan in front of him. His eyes swiftly turned crimson. His skinny body trembled intensely at this moment. His finger slowly pointed at Xiaoyan. The reward that Sun Hua gave might be tempting to an ordinary person, but Sun Hua was completely unmoved. If the person in front of him was not Xiaoyan, the Tier 3 medicinal pill that he would be able to obtain would be far more than what Sun Hua had promised. However, now everything had turned into bubbles. Xiaoyan parted his mouth and smiled. His smile contained ridicule and disdain. Yes, the person that your clan head is referring to is me, Xiaoyan. Chapter 581. Xiaoyan. Sun Hua's body trembled intensely within the four-way building. The words in his mouth appeared to have been forcefully squeezed out from between his teeth. It sounded as though it was filled with fury while suppressing the sorrow in his heart. Puff. When the fury in his chest burned to its limit, the powerful Do Qi within Sun Hua's body suddenly erupted. At the same time, the fury in his chest transformed into an endless killing intent. Die. Since I am unable to obtain anything, I will kill you today. Today the old me will tear you into 10,000 pieces. A hoarse cry was emitted from Sun Hua's mouth like a beast's roar. Sun Hua's grimacing appearance appeared especially terrifying. Ha! Sun Hua's body suddenly shot forward with a hoarse furious roar. He was just like a cannonball as he swiftly shot toward Xiaoyan who was in close proximity. Dark green Do Qi swiftly agglomerated on the surface of Sun Hua's body. In the blink of an eye, it transformed into a solid armor that wrapped around his entire body. The armor was covered with sharp thorns that were especially sharp. When it cut through the air, it left behind numerous dark black crack lines in the surrounding empty space. An invisible wind was like a sharp blade that swept across the interior of the room. Banging sounds of explosions continued to resound. At this moment, regardless of whether it was under his feet, above his head, or the other decorations in the room, everything was turned into pieces by Sun Hua's attack. The unstoppable strength caused anyone who saw it to be shocked. However, at this moment Xiaoyan, who was standing in front of Sun Hua, had an unmoved expression on his face. There was even a faint cold smile lingering in Xiaoyan's heart. Cuckoo! Suddenly, a faint cold laugh was emitted from Xiaoyan's mouth. Sun Hua attacked furiously. Only then did Xiaoyan raise his hand. His action appeared slow yet swift. There was a sense of urgency amidst the slowness, and afterimages were densely packed. Sun Hua's heart became even more furious when he saw Xiaoyan's face reveal a cold smile. A hoarse low roar was once again emitted from his throat. The strength of the solid armor on the surface of his body became even more terrifying. However, the next moment, clang. Xiaoyan's hand gently landed on the armor in front of him, which was covered with sharp thorns. This light palm strike easily blocked Sun Hua, who was charging over ferociously. The appearance of this scene caused the expression on Sun Hua's face under the armor to suddenly become shocked. When he raised his eyes and looked over, he saw that the expression on Xiaoyan's face was still calm. Sun Hua didn't seem to be putting any substantial pressure on Xiaoyan. It could even be said that Sun Hua's all-out attack was nothing but a piece of cake for Xiaoyan. How is this possible? Sun Hua's eyes were wide open as if they were about to pop out of their sockets. The expression on his face was one of utter shock. As his throat rolled, cold sweat quickly poured out of Sun Hua's body, soaking his clothes. Xiaoyan's face revealed a cold smile in the face of this. His dark black eyes were filled with disdain. Although the Sun Hua before him was a 9-star half-martial emperor, in Xiaoyan's eyes this was not the case. Your Do Qi is flashy but without substance. Your armor is very loose. You are simply unable to withstand a single blow. The way I see it, your strength as a 9-star half-martial emperor is most likely obtained through the accumulation of external items. Hearing Xiaoyan's words, Sun Hua's heart suddenly trembled. The expression on his face under the armor also became incomparably horrified. Never would he have imagined that the Xiaoyan before him was actually this frightening. His strength as a 9-star half-martial emperor was actually only obtained half a year ago by consuming a large amount of medicinal pellets in order to barely make a breakthrough. However, it was precisely because of this that his strength would no longer be able to make any progress in the future. Haha, with your strength there's no need to mention it. At the very most, you're only comparable to a peak late-stage 8-star half-martial emperor. If it were a 9-star half-martial emperor that had cultivated through normal means, even if that person had just made a breakthrough, they would still be able to easily take care of you. Xiaoyan's ruthless mocking words pierced into Sun Hua's heart like sharp thorns. This caused Sun Hua's face under the armor to rapidly become malevolent. However, even if that's the case, how could you possibly block me like this? As Sun Hua roared with a hoarse voice, his body suddenly moved. Covered by his armor, he ruthlessly smashed his fist toward Xiaoyan's head. His Do Qi condensed on his armored arm. the might of his Do Chi became even more frightening. Everywhere his Do Chi passed, even space itself would instantly collapse. Xiaoyan sneered. The current him was even able to take care of late-stage 9-star half-martial emperors. Thus, there was no need for him to take care of this fellow before him who could not even be considered a 9-star half-martial emperor. Slow, too slow. Faced with Sun Hua's attack, Xiaoyan's evaluation was only 2 words. In the next moment, Xiaoyan slightly twisted his extended palm. Then, a gorgeous heavenly flame flashed through his eyes. With a bang, Sun Hua's body was knocked back by Xiaoyan's attack. Vine thorns. Sun Hua, who was knocked back, was still unwilling to be outdone. The Do Chi within his body surged violently, and rapidly condensed into dark green thorns in the surrounding space. As the thorns rotated, they emitted an ice-cold sheen that resembled sword rays. Kill? Sun Hua gnashed his teeth and roared furiously. At the same time as the thorns shot out, Sun Hua's body also rapidly turned into a dark green ray of light that shot toward Xiaoyan with a rapid speed. Numerous thorns streaked through the air, forming an encirclement as they rapidly shot toward Xiaoyan. In this narrow space, Xiaoyan was simply unable to dodge. Seeing this, the corners of Xiaoyan's mouth rose into a slight sneer. He did not even look at the thorns that were shooting toward him. Instead, at a certain moment, his body that was standing on the spot suddenly twisted, and a whip kick ruthlessly smashed into the space beside him. Bang! In an instant, a frightening power burst forth like a torrential flood. At the same time, in the originally empty space, the armored Sun Hua suddenly appeared and took Xiaoyan's ferocious attack head-on. After the attack landed, Sun Hua's expression immediately became extremely frightened. His eyes were filled with endless terror. However, Xiaoyan did not give him a chance to catch his breath. This was because the soul strength that he had spread out had clearly sensed that many experts had already gathered outside the 4-way pavilion. It was likely that all the half-emperor experts in the entire Coldstream city had gathered here. Under the probing of Xiaoyan's soul strength, there were over a dozen 9-star half-emperors among these people. As for the half-emperors of various levels, there were even more innumerable. As for the Do Di experts, perhaps because of Bai Ying and Sun Shua, they did not make a move and only watched the situation from afar. Xiaoyan's heart involuntarily tightened when he sensed the many experts in the outside world. It was unexpected that the entire city would be mobilized to capture him because of him alone. It was likely that if it was not because of his relationship with those two, it was likely that there would not be a lack of elite Do Di. Looks like I can't delay any longer, Xiaoyan muttered in a low voice. His cold gaze immediately landed on Sun Hua, who had been sent flying. The corners of his mouth lifted into a bone-chilling smile. Immediately his body moved. Once he used the sky extinction steps, Xiaoyan instantly appeared beside Sun Hua. Golden light shot out from his eyes as Xiaoyan's body rapidly expanded. Diamond glass body. Chapter 582. Bang! Outside the 4-way pavilion where countless people were gathered, numerous figures rapidly flew over like meteors. However, at a certain moment, the 4-way pavilion before the crowd's eyes was suddenly destroyed by a frightening power in an instant. Before the astonished gazes of everyone present, the powerful power burst forth from the 4-way pavilion. Moreover, it only used a short instant to destroy the entire 4-way pavilion. At the same time as the enormous building collapsed, eye-piercing golden pillars of light shot out from the 4-way pavilion like the radiance emitted by the sun. This caused everyone who saw this scene to involuntarily close their eyes. At the same time, before the 4-way pavilion completely collapsed, the people within it rapidly turned into rays of light and rapidly flew out from within. When the crowd raised their eyes again, the eye-piercing golden light gradually decreased. Soon after, a giant that could hold up the sky slowly appeared before the crowd's eyes. At this moment, a somewhat miserable-looking figure was emitting a thin layer of dark green Do Chi radiance from his body. With the eyesight of the crowd, they were able to clearly see that the dark green Do Chi was condensing into a set of armor. However, at this moment, this armor appeared to be completely filled with conspicuous cracks. On the chest of the armor, one could clearly see a depression that was caused by Xiaoyan's whip kick. At this moment, the golden giant standing before the crowd was precisely Xiaoyan, who had used the diamond glass body. Since he would be exposed sooner or later, Xiaoyan did not pay too much attention to the greedy gazes of the crowd. He had already seen too much of this. Cough cough. Under the armor, fear was written all over Sun Hua's deathly pale face. No matter what, he had never imagined that the strength of a 9-star half-martial emperor that he was so proud of would appear so insignificant before Xiaoyan. Could it be that it was truly as Xiaoyan had said? Was he really that weak? No, it wasn't that Sun Hua was too weak. It was just that Xiao Yan's true strength was simply too terrifying. Merely with the strength of a 6-star half-martial emperor, Sun Hua was able to defeat a late-stage 9-star half-martial emperor. Before him, Sun Hua was truly nothing. Thus, it could not be said that Sun Hua was weak. It could only be said that the opponent he faced was simply too powerful. Cough cough. Sun Hua's entire body involuntarily trembled while he coughed intensely in his mouth. However, the expression in his eyes when he looked at Xiao Yan had become even more vicious. Cough cough, Xiao Yan, today even if I have to pay with my life, I will fight you to the death. If I can't get what I want, don't even think about leaving. Sun Hua's body swiftly swelled as his extremely hoarse voice sounded. The armor on the surface of his body disappeared. Numerous bright red crack lines swiftly split open on his dry wrinkled skin. Glaring bright red fresh blood swiftly surged out from them. Even the dou qi within his body swiftly became violent at this moment. From the looks of it, Sun Hua was clearly planning to self-destruct. Seeing this scene, the expressions on the faces of the surrounding half-martial emperors in the sky abruptly changed. They did not expect that before Xiao Yan had even been captured, Sun Hua had already given them such a great gift. Madman. This guy is truly a madman. Quickly retreat. This madman is going to self-destruct. Quickly retreat. Immediately, numerous alarmed cries began to resound in the sky. The crowd that had just gathered around the four-way pavilion immediately fled in panic like a flock of frightened sheep. The sky above Coldstream City immediately turned into a pot of porridge. What a joke. No matter what, that Sun Hua was a 9-star half-martial emperor. Even though his strength did not match that of a 9-star half-martial emperor, Sun Hua's strength would not be weak at all. If he were to explode at this moment, the might of his self-detonation would be so powerful that even the 9-star half-martial emperors present would not be able to escape calamity. However, while everyone in the sky was panicking, Xiao Yan sneered in his heart. At the same time, his enormous golden palms suddenly clenched tightly. Clanging sounds of metal colliding immediately rang out in the sky. At the same time, amidst the panic, everyone's gazes were once again attracted by Xiao Yan. I'll let you self-destruct. The instant a cold and disdainful shout was emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth, the enormous golden fist carried an extremely frightening power as it mercilessly tore through space. In the blink of an eye, it had already ruthlessly smashed into Sun Hua, whose body had swelled to an extreme degree. Bang! An earth-shaking explosion resounded in the sky above Coldstream City. Xiao Yan's fist had directly exploded a large region of space. After receiving Xiao Yan's fist, the berserk dou qi within Sun Hua's body was instantly dispersed by Xiao Yan's fist, directly breaking free from Sun Hua's control. This also passively prevented Sun Hua from self-destructing. When the fist landed, Sun Hua's body immediately flew out uncontrollably like a broken sack. Everywhere he passed, a large amount of blood sprayed out. In the end, Sun Hua's body, who was on the verge of death, smashed heavily into the main hall of the Sun Mansion. With a loud bang, Sun Hua's body ruthlessly smashed open a huge crater in the enormous courtyard. At this moment, everyone from the Sun family had ashen expressions as they looked at the unconscious Sun Hua in the crater. This was especially true for the Sun family's head, Sun Shura. His expression was extremely ugly at this moment. It would be fine if this had happened before the eyes of the Sun family. However, what infuriated Sun Shura the most was that the Bai family's head was right before his eyes. This is Sun Hua. Right at this moment, Bai Yi, who was behind Bai Ying, immediately revealed an expression of shock. His eyes stared fixedly at the unconscious figure in the crater, and his voice was filled with disbelief. What? Could it be that this guy is also a 9-star half-emperor? Seeing the shocked expression on Bai Ye's face, Bai Ying could not help but feel curious. He raised his eyebrows slightly and asked Bai Yi. Yes, this person is also an early 9-star half-emperor. Although I have never fought with him, there is no doubt about that. I never expected him to become like this in such a short period of time. Bai Yi nodded and looked at Sun Hua in the crater with lingering fear. He could not help but feel a chill run down his back. There was no need to think too much about the person who attacked Sun Hua. It was naturally Xiao Yan. However, Bai Yi did not expect Sun Hua to be defeated so quickly. Moreover, he was defeated so miserably. It was hard to imagine that if he was in Sun Hua's place, the one lying in the crater would likely be him, Bai Yi. Thinking of this, Bai Ye's heart surged with coldness. Oh? Hearing Bai Ye's words, Bai Ying could not help but reveal an expression of surprise. It had only been 4 to 6 hours since he received the news from Bai Yi. However, in such a short period of time Xiaoyan had swiftly defeated a 9-star half-emperor. Moreover, because Sun Hua did not recognize Xiaoyan at the beginning, perhaps the time Xiaoyan used to defeat Sun Hua was much shorter than what Bai Ying had imagined. Thinking of this, Bai Ying's expression could not help but change. At the same time he felt a wave of shock for Xiaoyan in his heart. Being able to defeat a 9-star half-martial emperor within such a short period of time, Xiaoyan's fighting strength could only be described with the word frightening. After all, from what he knew, Xiaoyan's current cultivation level had yet to exceed a 9-star half-martial emperor. However, immediately after, an extremely obscure light flashed in the depths of Bai Ying's eyes. When he raised his head to look at Sun Shua, a smile also flashed across the corners of Bai Ying's mouth. This change in less than an instant was not noticed by Sun Shua at all. Chapter 583. Haha, brother Sun Shua, never would I have imagined that your Sun family's people would be beaten back so quickly. This truly astonishes me. Could it be that your Sun family's people only possess this little bit of strength? However, as far as I know, this person is also a 9-star half-martial emperor, no? How could he be this weak? Could it be that your Sun family's people have forcibly increased their strength through the use of medicinal pellets? Bai Ying lifted his chin and pointed at Sun Hua in the huge pit as he spoke with a cold smile. Hearing these words, the expression on Sun Shua's steely green face instantly became incomparably gloomy. His hands, which were covered by his sleeves, suddenly clenched into fists. His entire body trembled intensely, unable to contain his anger. At this moment Bai Ying once again laughed out loud. The words in his mouth seemed to be advising him. Brother Sun Shua, I know that your Sun clan is the weakest among the 4 great clans. However, this method of yours is really too despicable. This method will only harm your Sun clan in the future. Brother Sun, you should listen to this older brother's advice. It is best that you stop using those crooked methods of yours as soon as possible. Bai Ying laughed out loud. The corners of his mouth lifted into a cold smile. The expression in his eyes was filled with ridicule. On the opposite side, Sun Shua heard these words from Bai Ying's mouth. The anger in his heart soared to the top of his head. The dou qi that had been suppressed in his body also began to surge uncontrollably at this moment. Humph! Suddenly, Sun Shua's nose emitted a cold snort that was like a low roar. At the same time, the hand under his sleeves finally swung out violently. The dou qi in his body churned. The majestic dou qi was like a wave that gushed out from his palm and swept out in all directions. Bai Ying's expression involuntarily changed when he saw this. Although he was not afraid of Sun Shua, he did not wish to have a conflict with him at such a time. Otherwise, if the other 2 great clans were to learn of this, they would interfere. At that time, if his Bai clan really fought with the Sun clan, the other 2 clans would simply watch from the sidelines. This would not be a good thing. After all, the Zhuo and Hua clans were much stronger than them. Once the Sun and Bai clans fought, they would be inferior to the other 2 clans in the future. Bai Ying involuntarily narrowed his eyes when he thought of this. The dou qi in the vortex in his body quietly circulated at this moment, preparing to face Sun Shua. However, soon after, bang! Dou qi swept out, turning into a long spear. Finally, it descended from the sky and ruthlessly stabbed into the huge pit below, in the chest of the already unconscious Sun Ti. The frightening strength directly pierced Sun Hua's body deep into the ground. Half of the dou qi spear, which was over 100 feet long, was also forcefully pierced into the ground. Looking down from the surface, one could no longer see Sun Hua's body. There was only a large pool of fresh blood that splattered out under the effect of the enormous strength, dyeing the surrounding ground red. The corner of Bai Ying's mouth lifted into a cold smile. He first narrowed his eyes as he glanced at Sun Shua. After which, his gaze turned and looked at the surroundings of the courtyard. Sure enough, when Bai Ying's gaze landed on the few Sun clan guards guarding the courtyard, their expressions changed. It was likely that they were similarly surprised in their hearts. They had never expected their clan leader to attack his own clan member. Moreover, from the looks of his furious appearance, even if Sun Hua had the strength to refute earlier, it was likely that he would not have any chance of survival under this ferocious attack. My Sun clan does not raise trash. My Sun clan does not need strength that relies on medicinal pills to accumulate strength. We will definitely not allow such a person to exist. Sun Shua's face was cold as he spoke in an extremely deep voice. He seemed to have sensed the change in the expressions of the guards. Only after these words were spoken did the expressions on the guards' faces ease up. Of course, it was unknown what they were thinking in their hearts. Bai Ying could not help but raise his brows when he saw this. He never expected Sun Hua to actually say something like this. All of his anger was poured onto Sun Hua, who could not be any more dead. This could be considered as saving the face of his Sun family. Otherwise, if Bai Ying were to spread this matter in the future, his Sun family would not even have the power to refute. Sun Yen, Sun Liang, go. Capture Xiao Yan for me. No matter what, he killed a member of my Bai clan. Today he must not be allowed to leave this place. Soon after, Sun Hua's foot suddenly stomped on the ground, and his entire body instantly rose into the air. A terrifying aura erupted from his body as a stern shout was emitted from his mouth. Immediately after, the expressions of the Sun Clan's 9-star half-martial emperors standing in the crowd around Xiao Yan changed slightly when they heard their clan leader's order. One must know that they had just witnessed Xiao Yan kill a 9-star half-martial emperor with a single punch. Now that Sun Hua was ordering them to attack, the 9-star half-martial emperors from the Sun Clan were more or less nervous in their hearts. After all, they did not want to end up in the same state as Sun Hua. Haha, clan leader Sun, it seems that your Sun Clan is truly powerless. With so many 9-star half-martial emperors, you actually don't even dare to deal with a single 6-star half-martial emperor. At this moment, Bai Ying deliberately mocked and ridiculed. At the same time, he once again looked towards Bai Yi. Noticing Bai Ying's gaze, Bai Ye's expression could not help but change again. A bad premonition rapidly surged from the bottom of his heart. If your Bai clan has the ability, why don't you let Bai Yi go first? Haha, that's exactly what I was thinking. After all, the strength of my Bai clan's members is obtained through steady cultivation, unlike some. At the end of his words, Bai Ying intentionally paused for a moment before raising his eyes. With a smile on his face, he said to Bai Yi, as a member of my Bai clan, this clan leader thinks highly of you. You'd best not disappoint this clan leader. Hearing this, Bai Yi was slightly startled. Although he wanted to say something, in the end he was powerless to refute. After all, the person before him was his Bai clan's clan leader. His words were something that no one in the Bai clan could refute. Haha, don't worry. I know that Xiao Yan is powerful. Thus, no matter what, as long as you dare to fight him, regardless of whether you win or lose, at least you won't lose face for our Bai clan. After his laughter sounded, Bai Ying intentionally or unintentionally glanced at Sun Hua. The mockery in his eyes deepened. At the same time, this made Sun Hua even more furious. Hearing this, Bai Yi helplessly nodded. Although the outcome had not changed, at least Bai Ying had given him a reason to breathe. This made Bai Yi feel slightly more relaxed. Although he was not sure if he could deal with Xiao Yan, Bai Yi was certain that as long as he wanted to, it would not be easy for Xiao Yan to deal with him. After all, with Sun Hua as an example, Bai Yi would only be more cautious when facing Xiao Yan. Bai Yi nodded heavily. Only then did he inhale a deep breath of air. His feet suddenly stomped on the ground. Immediately, rock fragments burst apart and Bai Ye's body swiftly shot into the sky like a cannonball that had been shot out. His eyes turned, leaped over the crowd that swarmed in the sky, and landed on Xiao Yan's body, which had transformed into a giant god. Xiao Yan seemed to have sensed the gaze that had shot over. His body suddenly turned. At the same time that he scared away the surrounding crowd, a pair of bright golden overbearing eyes instantly landed on Bai Ye's body. The person who left the 4 pavilion earlier was you, right? Xiao Yan ignored the surrounding people. His sharp eyes stared at Bai Yi as he spoke in a dense tone. Bai Yi was non-committal when he heard this. At the same time, a thought passed through his heart. The dou qi within his body immediately circulated throughout his entire body. With a puff, sound, dense white dou qi rose from the surface of Bai Ye's body like a cluster of flames. Chapter 584. The dense white dou qi rose on the surface of Bai Ye's body like a flame. The temperature of the place also gradually rose when the dou qi surged out from Bai Ye's body. Oh! Fire affinity dou qi ha. A trace of surprise involuntarily flashed across Xiao Yan's eyes when he saw this. He had never seen a fire affinity dou qi that could turn into a dense white color. Humph! Bai Yi merely snorted coldly with a grave expression in the face of this. His body suddenly moved. As the flame drifted, his body disappeared from the spot. At the same time, the expressions of most of the Bandi experts present changed slightly. Bai Ye's strength was even greater when compared to Sun Hua. At the very least, Bai Yi did not rely on an external object to raise his strength. Ah! Mysterious flame hand. In the blink of an eye, Bai Yi had already passed through the crowd and swiftly arrived in front of Xiao Yan. He waved his large hand and dense white dou qi swiftly agglomerated in his palm. His body rotated in midair and a palm was violently smashed toward Xiao Yan's chest. Looking from a distance, the current Baiyi was like a sparrow and a human when compared to Xiaoyan. The difference in size between the two of them was difficult to imagine. The person who attacked first was actually Baiyi. Looking at the current Baiyi, the fear in his eyes had already been reduced by more than half. He also understood that when faced with an expert like Xiaoyan, fear would only cause him to be at a disadvantage. If he wanted to defeat Xiaoyan in front of him, he must first not be afraid. Otherwise, how could he fight if he feared life and death? Moreover, at such a close distance, Baiyi thought that Xiaoyan, who had transformed into the King Kong glass body, would definitely be a little slow. At this moment he had suddenly arrived in front of Xiaoyan. Even with Xiaoyan's reaction, it would be difficult for him to immediately launch an attack. As long as his speed was fast enough, it would not be so easy for Xiaoyan to injure him. Unfortunately, Baiyi's thinking was clearly wrong. The King Kong glass body had accompanied Xiaoyan for many years. Xiaoyan was extremely proficient in its usage. The original flaw of the King Kong glass body had been completely made up for by Xiaoyan's absolute strength. Hence, Baiyi's actions were completely useless in Xiaoyan's eyes. "Cuckoo, your thinking is not bad. Unfortunately, you are still too slow." Xiaoyan laughed softly. Xiaoyan's fist. Xiaoyan was about to hit Baiyi's body. He came from behind Xiaoyan's attack. Immediately, the sound of bones being broken repeatedly sounded. The expressions of the various experts watching the battle changed once again. No one had expected that even though it was a person stronger than Sun Hua, he would still be unable to endure a punch from Xiaoyan. This fellow is really too frightening. Is he really a human? This kind of frightening physical strength. It is likely that even those magical beasts who specialize in training their physical bodies cannot compare with him. Bang! While everyone was shocked in their hearts, Baiyi's body was sent flying by Xiaoyan's punch. Do Qi poured out and Baiyi's body forcefully came to a stop in the air with great difficulty. After pausing, Baiyi immediately felt as though his body was about to fall apart. An intense pain was being emitted from all over his body. This kind of intense pain was something that did not have much of an effect even if he used his Do Qi to suppress it. Damn it! This fellow's true strength is far greater than this. Baiyi muttered in his heart. At the same time, he involuntarily turned his gaze to Bai Ying in the distance. At this moment, only he could decide whether he should stay or leave. "Baiyi, I'll leave the face of my Bai family in your hands. Hold him back. As long as you can hold him back for another hour, you will be able to rest at that time. Once we return to the clan, I will reward you with 2 Tier 3 medicinal pills." Bai Ying transmitted his voice to Baiyi with a solemn expression when he saw Baiyi's gaze shoot over. Hearing this, with the temptation of the pill, a fiery feeling immediately rose in Baiyi's heart. A 3rd-level pill. Even if he were to exhaust all of his family's resources, he would at most be able to obtain one. However, he never expected that his master would actually ask for 2. Baiyi's gaze turned and once again landed on Xiaoyan. The depths of his eyes were filled with a fiery heat. He was really going all out for the sake of those 2 Tier 3 medicinal pills? Xiaoyan again. Baiyi's body suddenly moved with a furious cry. He ignored the injuries in his body and dodged a couple of times in the air in the blink of an eye before arriving behind Xiaoyan. He waved his large hand and a broadsword immediately landed in his hand. Do Qi gathered and the broadsword emitted a dazzling white light under the cover of the dense white Do Qi. At the same time, the temperature of the area once again rose. Blazing blade slash. The broadsword swiftly descended after the furious cry sounded. The moment Xiaoyan attacked, the broadsword ruthlessly landed on Xiaoyan's back. Baiyi's body once again flashed after the attack landed. Xiaoyan's body steadily stood in the air. Both of his hands continued to dance as he received the numerous Do skills that Baiyi had unleashed. The faces of everyone who saw this scene were filled with shock. Their hearts were incomparably shocked by Xiaoyan's soul-stirring action. It should be known that as a 9-star half-emperor, Baiyi's strength was already frighteningly strong. If he were to add those various man-class Do skills, once he used them, it would not be an exaggeration to describe the frightening might that could destroy the world. However, at this moment, when faced with these man-class Do skills that could cause the expressions of all half-emperors to change, Xiaoyan had actually relied on his physical strength and the overbearingness of the King Kong glass body to forcefully shatter them. The emotions in the hearts of everyone present had already reached an indescribable level as they personally witnessed the scene before them. They even doubted whether the Xiaoyan before them was truly a human. Was he really a half-emperor? Was he really only a 6-star half-emperor? The broadsword danced in the sky. Numerous shockingly frightening Do skills were completely unleashed by Ye's 9-star half-emperor strength. In a short period of time, Ye could be said to have unleashed all the skills that he had learned in his life. Over a dozen powerful Do skills were wantonly shot out from Ye's hands. Other than a portion of them being blocked by Xiaoyan's Do Qi, most of them were blocked by Xiaoyan using the most violent method. Relying on his King Kong body, he practically destroyed a man-class Do skill with a single punch. No matter how hard Yi tried to unleash his Do skills, no matter how crazily the Do Qi within his body gushed out, in the end, what he received in exchange was still Xiaoyan's normal punch. Before Xiaoyan's punch, it was as if all the attacks were useless. Sparks flew in all directions. The broadsword once again fiercely smashed onto Xiaoyan's arm. However, the result was that Xiaoyan forcefully shook it. As the enormous force poured out, the broadsword was fiercely sent flying. Even Ye's body was uncontrollably sent flying backwards. Seeing this scene, the hearts of the crowd outside the arena were once again shocked. They didn't know how many times Xiaoyan had sent Yi flying. However, there was one thing that everyone was very clear in their hearts. Even until now, in the process of fighting with Yi, Xiaoyan as the main character, still hadn't used a single Do skill. Just this point alone was enough to prove how powerful Xiaoyan was. Forcefully enduring the numbness that came from his arms, Ye's expression was grave. The remaining Do Qi within his body crazily surged out of his body. With a twist of his wrist, he once again tightly grasped the hilt of his broadsword. His feet fiercely stepped into the air, and in the blink of an eye, his figure once again disappeared. In the next instant, the broadsword appeared above Xiaoyan's head. At this moment, Ye's figure was nowhere to be seen. Try out this famous Do skill of mine. Suddenly, Ye's stern cry reverberated throughout the entire place. At the same time, a thick white Do Qi flame suddenly rose from the broadsword that appeared above Xiaoyan's head with a puff sound. The fierce flame soared to the sky and pierced through the 9 heavens. The aura on it also swiftly became frightening. Red Lotus Soul-breaking blade. After the aura on the broadsword had agglomerated to an extremely frightening degree, a hoarse low cry was suddenly emitted from Ye's mouth. His roar was like thunder, shaking the entire place. At the same time, the broadsword that was burning with a thick white flame suddenly shook. Under the eruption of a frightening strength, the surrounding space instantly collapsed. At this moment, the broadsword also carried a frightening aura that could destroy the world as it violently fell toward Xiaoyan below. The expressions on the faces of the surrounding people involuntarily changed when they sensed the frightening aura on the broadsword. Even the few 9-star Ban emperors present involuntarily revealed grave expressions on their faces. On the other side, Bai Ying revealed a surprised expression on his face when he saw that Yi was actually forced to use his full strength by Xiaoyan. However, at this moment Xiaoyan suddenly emitted a cold snort. His body shook and a beautiful heavenly flame immediately agglomerated on the surface of his body. The frighteningly high temperature caused the surrounding air to immediately become unusually dry. Everyone nearby also swiftly withdrew with a change in expression. Xiaoyan raised his head. A pair of golden eyes that were emitting a golden light stared at the broadsword that was rapidly descending above his head. His heart was icy cold. This Yi had really provoked the fury in his heart. Suddenly Xiaoyan emitted an earth-shaking cry from his mouth. At the same time, his large hand suddenly clenched and a beautiful heavenly flame swiftly agglomerated in Xiaoyan's palm. In the blink of an eye, it agglomerated into an enormous flaming ruler. Without pausing, the instant the enormous flaming ruler was agglomerated, Xiaoyan's hand, which was holding the enormous ruler, suddenly swung his arm. The enormous ruler suddenly rose into the air. At the same time, a terrifying aura of destruction that was not the slightest bit weaker than the former was swiftly emitted from the enormous flaming ruler. 7-layer sky-breaking ruler. 1 ruler. Xiaoyan let out a stern cry in his heart. Soon after, the enormous ruler in his hand violently cut through the empty space. The powerful strength caused the entire place to be destroyed. At the same time the enormous ruler rushed through the empty space, transforming into a dark black, deep, endless empty space. Immediately the expressions of everyone present changed drastically. No one had expected that Xiaoyan in front of them was actually already this frightening. A random wave of his hand was actually a human-class Do skill. This fellow, is he really just a half-martial emperor? He is indeed a half-martial emperor. However, the strength that he possesses far surpasses that of an ordinary half-martial emperor. Regardless of whether it is the degree of condensation of the Do Chi within his body or his comprehension of Do skills, they have all reached the peak. It is extremely dangerous to be an opponent of such a person. Unless one has the confidence to kill him. Otherwise, once he matures, no one in the entire western region will be a match for him. To be able to make the four great sects work together to hunt him down, he is really not someone that an ordinary person can compare with. He already possesses such frightening battle strength as a half-martial emperor. Once he reaches the level of a true Do Di, won't he be able to fight against Origin Realm experts? The few Do Di experts who were watching the battle from afar could not help but click their tongues in amazement. The Xiaoyan before them was much more frightening than they had imagined. Even they found it hard to believe that a 6-star half-martial emperor could erupt with such great strength. This person from the Bai clan is about to be defeated. An expert Do Di stared at the giant ruler that Xiaoyan had swung. He sensed the extremely frightening destructive strength within it. Even with his mental fortitude, he could not help but frown slightly. Soon after, in the next moment, a brilliant ruler glow swept out from the giant flaming ruler. Wherever it passed, the space within a radius of 100 miles would instantly collapse. Everyone outside the battleground rapidly retreated at this moment. No one wanted to be affected by this frightening strength. In the distance, Bai Ying narrowed his eyes as he stared intently at Xiaoyan. The shock in his heart was even more unimaginable. Even he had not expected that a half-martial emperor like Xiaoyan would actually be so powerful. As for Sun Shua beside him, other than a cold smile, there was an even more solemn expression on his face. There were very few people who could be treated in such a manner by him. This was something that even the other 3 clan heads of the 4 great clans could not do. At this moment, Xiaoyan had completely overturned his understanding of a half-martial emperor. He had never imagined that a mere half-martial emperor would be able to erupt with such frightening strength. This brat, he must not be allowed to leave this place today. Sun Shua quietly cried out in his heart. At the same time, the hands under his sleeves slowly clenched. The Do Chi in his body quietly circulated. However, all of this was also sensed by Bai Ying, who had been monitoring him. Boom! The earth-shaking explosion was just like an invisible storm. Even though it did not possess any substantial strength, it still caused the expressions of everyone in Coldstream City to wildly change. The eardrums of quite a number of people who were weaker were instantly ruptured by this explosion. Fresh blood was accompanied by an intense pain as it surged out from their ears. Everyone's faces were filled with ferocity and pain. Even those 9-star half-martial emperors had similarly turned pale at this moment. The frightening strength contained within the broadsword was reduced by over half the moment it collided with the ruler glow. It was only when Bai Yi, who was at an unknown location, wildly exhausted the Do Chi within his body that the broadsword stabilized. However, it was barely able to match Xiaoyan's ruler glow and was far from enough to break it. Only at this moment did Bai Yi completely understand just how frightening the strength of this Xiaoyan in front of him was. It was likely that there was no one other than a Do Di who could contend with such a person. However, at this moment, even though he had already come to a realization, it was already too late. There was no turning back an arrow that had been shot. Now he either had to use all his strength to fight with Xiaoyan, or he would end up seriously injured or even dead. Damn it. I'll go all out. Bai Yi clenched his teeth tightly. He crazily maneuvered the little Do Chi left in his body. His pale face had turned flushed red because of this. Even his pair of densely white eyes were filled with a scarlet color at this moment. However, even though Bai Yi used all his strength, everything he did was still useless in front of Xiaoyan. 7-layer sky-breaking ruler, 2 feet. An indifferent low cry sounded from within Xiaoyan's heart. Before this ruler glow could land, another ruler glow violently shot out from the enormous ruler in Xiaoyan's hand. In the blink of an eye, it merged with the previous ruler glow. Immediately, the already frightening might of the ruler glow became even more frightening at this moment. In merely an instant, a clear cracking sound was emitted from the broadsword that was covered by Do Chi. Immediately after, a metal fragment the size of a palm shot out from the broadsword. Grug. At the same time, Bai Yi also involuntarily spat out a large mouthful of fresh blood. The aura of his entire body instantly weakened. 3 feet. Xiaoyan was merciless in the face of this. He waved the enormous ruler in his hand and another ruler glow swept toward the broadsword from all directions while carrying a frightening aura that could destroy the world. Bang! This time around it was different from before. Under this attack of Xiaoyan's, the strength of the merger of the 3 ruler glows was basically unstoppable as it completely shattered the broadsword. Get lost. Otherwise, the next thing to shatter will be your head. A thunder-like voice reverberated unceasingly over this place. At this moment, the words from Xiaoyan's mouth reverberated in everyone's minds. Everyone's hearts were filled with shock and horror. Who? Xiaoyan slowly exhaled a breath of air. Only then did he turn around. His gaze involuntarily glanced at Bai Ying and Sun Shua, who were standing in the distant empty space. His heart involuntarily tightened. Those two were genuine elite Do Di. Once they attacked, Xiaoyan would have nowhere to run. He had finished off Sun Hua earlier merely to intimidate the surrounding group of people. If this continued to drag on, it would not be a good thing for Xiaoyan. Xiaoyan could not be bothered with Bai Yi when he thought of this. His gaze ruthlessly swept over the surrounding people. Anyone who met Xiaoyan's gaze involuntarily retreated with trembling bodies. Xiaoyan, on the other hand, coldly glanced at them before turning around. He stepped on empty space and flew out of Coldstream City. Seeing this, the expression in the eyes of Bai Ying, who was standing in the empty space, changed slightly. He did not wish for Xiaoyan to flee at this moment. He needed to think of a way to stop him. Bai Ying's gaze turned as he thought of this. He hurriedly looked at Bai Yi once again. Unfortunately, the latter was already an arrow at the end of its flight. It was impossible for him to have the strength to stop Xiaoyan. This involuntarily caused Bai Ying to feel helpless in his heart. The time was not right. If Xiaoyan were to leave at this moment, it would not be a good thing for him. Stop right there. You can forget about leaving this place today. However, at this moment, Sun Shua, who was beside Bai Ying, suddenly let out a cold snort. At the same time, an even more frightening aura and pressure instantly covered the sky above Coldstream City. Powerful Do Qi swiftly agglomerated into a circular barrier around Xiaoyan's body, blocking his footsteps that were just about to leave.